listening to the interview from the BBC World Service. If you enjoyed today's programme, you can listen to the interview wherever you get your BBC podcasts. Until the next time, goodbye.
From the BBC, that was the interview. I'm Saroja Coelho. CBC News is next.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Welcome to the show this morning. You're on CBC's Information Radio, the morning show, on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Well, we broke heat records yesterday. Could we do that again today? Well, maybe. Today's high is 35 degrees in Winnipeg. Lots of sunshine. It's going to be windy once again. And once again, we've got a heat warning that extends across most of southern Manitoba, includes the city of Winnipeg. We have air quality statements because of the wind and the fire situation for areas around the Paw, West Ray Wanlis, as well as Victoria Beach, Nopaming Provincial Park, and Pine Falls. What a day we had in the city and outside as well when it comes to heat and fires. We'll walk you through all of it in our news and on our show today. So thanks for being here. Morning show's on till 8:37 a.m. Let's say good morning to the team. Mr. Abby Adiemi, looking fine, back in his pink shirt behind the controls today. Hey, Abby. Abby was away yesterday. He is our senior technician. He covers the weather on the air. Good morning to Mr. Brad Lilly's also making his triumphant return and saying hello to you. He is your YouTube producer for the morning show. So if you're watching, make sure you say hello in the comments. And Corey Funk is back as well. Corey's our show director and covers the commute on the air, which is looking fine right now. We don't have anything early to report. Let's get into other news, though. Heather Wells does join us live as well. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, an anxious few hours for people in Transcona yesterday afternoon as grass fire damaged buildings, forcing nearby businesses to evacuate. Carol Berry was at work when safety staff ordered her to leave her office as a precaution. She says it was nerve-wracking, and fire crews from Winnipeg and the RM of Springfield were on scene for hours there. Frightening moments as well for a Winnipeg woman waking up to grass fire yesterday behind her McPhillip Street home. We're going to hear from her. She says it was like the sky was on fire. So more on the fire situation this morning, coming up in our next morning news, coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather. Russ Wyatt, longtime city councillor, is going to join us as well, just to talk about what happened in Transcona yesterday, and also to talk about how unusual this is when you compare it to past years, especially when you look at what is happening around the city of Winnipeg within the perimeter here. Well, in the first hour of the show, to Other Matters, we will be talking about U.S. President Donald Trump beginning his first big international trip since returning to office, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. So we'll get more analysis on World Report as well. And that's straight ahead. It's 1 minute to 6 o'clock. Stay with us here on CBC 89.3.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. The explosively popular punk band Pup just released their 5th record. Frontman Stephen Babcock reflects on time passing, relationships ending, and why doing over 200 shows a year isn't sustainable anymore.
Q. This morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The coming weeks will be crucial for the Canadian government. It is hosting the G7 summit in June. A federal budget needs to be tabled soon, and there are ongoing tariff negotiations with U.S. President Donald Trump. Today, we will find out who will be taking on some of those big responsibilities when Prime Minister Mark Carney's new cabinet is sworn in at Rideau Hall. Senior parliamentary reporter Janice McGregor is there. And Janice, you were at Rideau Hall almost 9 weeks ago. But now Mark Carney has an election win behind him. How will this cabinet be different?
Well, what a difference a mandate makes, Marcia. This morning, we're going to see the team Mark Carney wants around him to govern for the longer term. And some of his early choices are revealing. Considering the natural resources file, Jonathan Wilkinson, who is someone who didn't always see eye to eye with the energy sector, he's out of this cabinet. Tim Hodgson, a former advisor to Carney at the Bank of Canada, former CEO at Goldman Sachs, he is going to take over the energy file. And Carney has new options now to represent Western Canada. Former Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson is expected to be named the new housing minister. Eleanor Olszewski, newly elected in Edmonton, also expected to join this cabinet, as is Rebecca Alty, the former mayor of Yellowknife, who's now the MP for Northwest Territories. And Quebec is going to be represented by new faces as well. Newly elected gun control advocate Nathalie Provost, as well as veteran MP Joël Lightbound. Finally, St. John MP Wayne Long, one of the original MPs in caucus to challenge Justin Trudeau's leadership, he's also getting some kind of a new role today.
Carney's also keeping some experienced ministers in his inner circle. Who do we know is returning?
Indeed. Let's start with Sean Fraser, coming in to take over the justice portfolio and stick-handle demands from the premiers and Conservatives for things like meaningful bail reform. Chrystia Freeland and Stephen Guilbeault, contrary to some speculation, they are still going to be part of this team. We are only weeks away from the return of Parliament, but a federal budget, a G7 summit, key NATO talks. Among the senior roles, finance, foreign affairs, defense, Carney may be opting here to keep at least some continuity, some institutional memory close at hand.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting in Ottawa. U.S. President Donald Trump arrives at the royal court in Saudi Arabia. He is once again greeted by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The two met earlier in the day on the tarmac after Air Force One landed. This is day one of a 4-day visit to the Middle East, and it is expected to be a lucrative trip. Trump has brought along some high-profile business leaders, including Elon Musk. In the backdrop of this trip are renewed efforts by the United States to end the war in Gaza. CBC correspondent Chris Brown is following Trump's visit in Riyadh.
Donald Trump's visit here feels like an enormous trade fair. I'm at the Saudi-U.S. Investment Forum in Riyadh. It's the centerpiece of this deal-signing bonanza that Trump has been touting. The Saudis are trying to transition their country from one largely focused on producing oil to an economy that's much more diverse. And all around me, they have these large-scale models of some of these so-called giga projects, such as a huge cube that's now being built in the middle of Riyadh that they say will not only be the tallest building in the world when it's done, but also the largest overall. Trump stepped off Air Force One and was met by the de facto ruler here, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, whose vision is driving this transition. MBS, as he's called, hosted a big lunch full of the world's top business leaders, and later the two men will attend a variety of business events on this day. But while Trump seems very comfortable in this part of the world, there are key issues that he and his Saudi hosts disagree on, namely the war in Gaza. Saudi officials want Trump to put more pressure on Israel to end its attacks on Gaza and to let humanitarian aid and food into the besieged territory. Negotiators for Israel, along with mediators, are meeting next door today in Qatar, and Trump's team is hoping that there will be some momentum after Hamas's release yesterday of an American-Israeli hostage, so that ceasefire talks might possibly lead somewhere. Chris Brown, CBC News in Riyadh.
Former Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte appears to have been elected mayor in his home city. Duterte is in a European prison. Preliminary results from the country's midterm elections suggest Duterte won in a landslide. His win is a huge boost for his daughter, current Vice President Sara Duterte. She is considered a strong contender for the 2028 presidential race. But Sara Duterte is facing impeachment on a slew of charges, including allegations she tried to assassinate President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Duterte has denied the charges. Her father is being held by the International Criminal Court in The Hague for crimes against humanity. It is not clear how he will be able to serve as mayor while behind bars. Canadian tobacco companies will start to pay out billions of dollars this year as part of a class action lawsuit. In total, $32 billion will be paid out over 20 years. Most of that to provinces and territories. Newfoundland and Labrador has put its entire portion into this year's budget. It is an election year. As Peter Cowan reports, experts are questioning that approach.
That's probably one of the lowest in the country.
Newfoundland and Labrador's finance minister has touted just how small the province's $372 million deficit is this year. But what Siobhan Cody didn't mention was the deficit would have been almost double if it wasn't for the settling of a decades-long court battle with tobacco companies.
There's a large tobacco settlement, which is about $500 million.
The Deputy Minister of Finance, Michelle Dewar, says it took the total amount of the settlement and put it into this year's budget, even though the actual amount will be paid out over 20 years. It's the only province to do it this way. Other provinces like Quebec and PEI are adding the amount they expect to actually receive this year, or they told CBC they're still studying how to account for this.
The government's up for re-election.
Ian Lee, who's a professor of business management at Ottawa's Carleton University, says politics may have influenced how Newfoundland and Labrador treated this.
The temptation is, hey, we'll take it all into revenues and we'll make the situation look much better than it really is.
The province says it's following accounting standards, but it'll be up to the Auditor General to decide if this follows the rules. Lee isn't convinced these payments are a sure thing.
Whether or not they'll be around to pay this money is very, very uncertain.
What's more certain, a provincial election is scheduled for October. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
French movie star Gerard Depardieu has been found guilty of sexual assault in 2 separate cases. A panel of judges in a Paris court handed the 76-year-old an 18-month suspended prison sentence. Depardieu was convicted of groping a set decorator on a film in 2021 and in a second case, groping an assistant on the same set. He is the highest profile person in the French film industry to face sexual assault allegations since the Me Too movement. Depardieu's lawyers say he will appeal the conviction. Lawyers for the Menendez brothers will be back in a Los Angeles court. Eric and Lyle Menendez were sentenced to life without parole for the murder of their parents. That was nearly 3 decades ago. Today, their attorneys are asking for a reduced sentence. Steve Futterman is following the case.
Eric and Lyle Menendez were found guilty in 1996 of first-degree murder in the killing of their parents. But now their attorneys are asking a judge to resentence them, which could lead to their release. The brothers have served more than 35 years in prison. Defense attorney Mark Garrigo says they are no longer a threat.
The key issue is there a likelihood of a super strike?
Under California law, a super strike is a serious violent crime. LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman says the brothers haven't publicly acknowledged the brutality of the murders. He opposes any resentencing.
The issue with the Menendez brothers is not never. They should never qualify for resentencing. We said it was not yet.
Supporters of the brothers also claim they were sexually abused by their father, Jose. Anna Maria Baralt is a Menendez cousin. She wants them set free.
I know Lyle and Eric. I know them personally. I know their growth. I've seen their journeys. And they are absolutely well suited for this process for resentencing.
Even if their life sentence is reduced to 50 years to life, a parole board would still have to approve their release. During the hearing, the brothers will be connected from their prison by a video link. It's possible they will testify. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello there, Winnipeg. Well, we have fire trouble, we have air quality challenges, and we broke heat records. What a start to May we're having. Thanks for joining us on Information Radio. You are listening to CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. So we're going to get through all of those weather details and find out where the threats lie in a moment. Heather Wells will be in with our news, and then we'll run down what's happening in the weather today. Another really hot, windy day on the way. This hour, in addition, we will have more analysis of what we've just been tuning into on World Report. U.S. President Donald Trump's first big international trip since returning to office, so we'll hear more about it. Plus, we will talk about some of the records broken the last few days with 35 degrees on top for today. Yesterday, breaking a 67-year-old record in this city. Climatologists say they're concerned, so we're going to hear from Dave Phillips this hour on the program. Stay with us. Also, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of this country, is going to announce his cabinet today. Are any Manitobans in the mix? Well, there might be one name, so we'll tell you why we're saying that in a moment as well. Heather Wells is here with our headlines. Good morning to you.
Well, a grass fire has people in the Bird River area on edge. The municipality of Alexander advising anyone between Hill Road and Bird River Bridge to leave their homes yesterday. And the province says crews are fighting a separate fire nearby in Nopaming Provincial Park. As of yesterday afternoon, that fire was about 400 hectares in size. A few hours for people in the Transcona area yesterday as a grass fire near Gun Road damaged buildings, forcing nearby businesses to evacuate. Frightening moments as well for a Winnipeg woman who woke up to a grass fire behind her McPhillip Street home. We'll hear all about it in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
Some of the images yesterday of that, Heather, I don't remember within the city of Winnipeg, at least not in recent memory. But I guess it's just such an unusual situation.
It really is. And as you're going to hear from Dave Phillips, I mean, this is not a typical May. What is happening here?
No. Not at all. We should remind people, you and I were also talking about some of the restrictions within the city of Winnipeg.
Yes, there is a burn ban in place. So anyone, everyone loves fire pits. They love barbecuing, but you cannot burn solid fuel burning barbecues. So whether that's wood or charcoal, you cannot burn those. You can still use your gas barbecue. And this fire ban is in effect until May 19th.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So that's going to be right through the long weekend. So don't be tempted, even though it's going to get cold. We can't even imagine this, right? Let's just stay with the heat for now, though, because that's where we're at. Abby Adeyemi has returned, and he's going to talk about how hot it's going to get today again. Hi.
Yeah, it's going to be another hot one today. We will be touching around 35, 36. We are already at 24, Marcy, so it's only going to get hot from here. It's going to be a hot and sunny start across most regions down south. Looking at conditions right now in Winnipeg, the sun already making its appearance to warm things up. 24 degrees at this point. We do have this heat warning in effect. It remains in effect for Winnipeg and surrounding areas all the way down to the Emerson borders. We're looking at a very hot daytime temperature warming up to mid 30s. So you need to take care. But for Winnipeg today, it calls for plenty of sunshine. We warm up to 35 later. It feels hot throughout the day. Some windy conditions will come from the south. And then tonight we'll see partly cloudy conditions where temperatures dip into around 16 degrees. And then we have a heat warning in effect for this part of the Red River Valley region, as I mentioned. That Nopaming Provincial Park we talked about, smoke is in effect there also. So there's a air quality statement for folks out there. You need to take care if you're out and about in that region.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
It was so strange, Corey Funk. Last night I was out watering my trees, and I had to remind myself as I was standing there in my flip-flops and shorts at like 7 o'clock that it wasn't August.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's I had ultimate frisbee last night, and we were like used to being like, cold hands, rainy kind of thing, and we were looking around like what's going on.
Yeah, it's so odd. What's up in the commute?
It's been very quiet so far. No major issues to report. But just a reminder, there's a new construction on St. Anne's there between St. Mary's and Fermor, and so look out for that, as well as around Dunkirk as well. There's that construction just coming off the bridge if you're going southbound. But if you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line if you want to let me know any updates. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Well, U.S. President Donald Trump is in the Middle East, as you've been hearing, for his first big trip since retaking office. He is visiting Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, as well as the whole region to talk trade, oil, and tech. But he's walking into a region that's on edge. Rex Brynan's here to talk more about what we've already seen this morning, because, of course, of the time difference. He's a professor of political science at McGill University. He joins us from Montreal. Good morning.
Good morning.
What do you think Trump's hoping to get out of this trip?
Well, I think this is a trip he very much likes to do. He looks like a world leader. He'll announce some investment deals. The Gulf states will absolutely flatter his ego, which is something they're very good at doing. There's really no downside for him.
And what about the Gulf states in terms of what they might want out of this trip?
Well, they see Trump as a very transactional leader. He's not worried about pesky things like human rights or climate change. He's very much in alignment with them in terms of viewing Iran as a security threat. They'll hope that he puts some pressure on Israel over its brutal war in Gaza. And more generally, they feel that he's someone they can influence with flattery, and that they can grow their influence further in Washington.
Trump is skipping Israel this time. Obviously, we're hearing on World Report that Gaza's on the cusp of a famine they're talking about now. What message does it send that he's skipping Israel?
Well, I don't think that he has the close emotional attachment to Israel that Joe Biden had. Obviously, the Republican Party is very close to Israel's current far-right government. But he might be more willing to put some pressure on the Israelis. He's certainly willing to negotiate independently with Hamas. We saw that with the release of a U.S. hostage by Hamas. And so the Israelis are a bit nervous. But equally, he's not any friend of the Palestinians, as we saw with his earlier plan to redevelop Gaza by ethnically cleansing the Palestinian population from there. But the Gulf states hope that he might put more pressure on the Netanyahu government.
Will this make a difference in diplomacy in the region, do you think, this trip?
I think it's hard to tell. These things take a longer term. Certainly, there will be announcements. Those announcements will probably be a bit exaggerated, but I think it will simply cement the very close relationships that exist between the Gulf states and the Trump administration.
Is he going to bring up the Abraham Accords and revive the momentum behind that?
I think he's given up on Israeli-Saudi normalization at this point. The Saudis have made it very clear that they're not interested until Israel stops its war in Gaza and commits to the eventual establishment of a Palestinian state, which the Netanyahu government is not willing to do. But we might instead see a deepening of Saudi-American defense relationships.
What about big business deals? Elon Musk is on this trip along with others, or maybe security deals that we might see.
I think we'll see announcements of both. They'll probably be somewhat exaggerated in their significance. We'll also see Gulf purchases of U.S. defense hardware. And again, that looks good for Trump. He can announce economic success for the United States at the conclusion of these meetings.
Thank you for walking us through the details. We'll see what develops through the rest of the day here, Rex. Appreciate having you on.
You're welcome.
That's our Rex Brynan teeing up what is happening right now with U.S. President Donald Trump's visit to the Qatar, to Saudi Arabia, and to the UAE this morning. We reached Rex in Montreal. He's a professor of political science there at McGill University.
Whether you're hanging out or out on the move, stay in the know with CBC Listen. The cost of living with Paul Havershrud goes beyond facts and figures.
Real estate is the 800-pound gorilla of Canada's economy.
And What on Earth with Laura Lynch explores the climate change crisis, problems and solutions.
What happened that made you start to think and see climate change differently?
The Cost of Living and What on Earth. Available now on CBC Listen.
6:19 is the time right now, and across Manitoba, we really need a break from the heat. We need some rain for sure. We need a lot of rain, and we need the winds to calm down. We won't get any of those things today. Today we're going to have, as Abby mentioned, in Winnipeg, at least a high of 35. It's going to be sunny, and winds will be south 40, gusting to 60. And conditions are actually similar across many parts of the province. Typically, we need to wait for summer months to experience what we've been experiencing with the temperatures in the last few days. And it's not over yet, right? Tomorrow we still have another day where we're expected to be above 30. The first heat warning of the year hit the southern part of the province with an unusual intensity and length, as I mentioned. It got so hot in parts of the province that it did break records. We've been alluding to the one in Winnipeg. Now, according to Environment and Climate Change Canada, yesterday in the city we broke an almost 70-year-old heat record. And we aren't alone. Other cities like Steinbach and Portage la Prairie are also reaching new daytime highs right now. And it's not, obviously, necessarily a good thing, even though you might be enjoying it out there in your shorts. David Phillips is a climatologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. He had a conversation about all of this with CBC's Rosanna Hempel.
Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 4 days in a row with temperatures that are above 30 degrees. And we're not just talking just at 30. We're talking at 34, 35 degrees tomorrow. That is the forecasted high, 34 degrees on Wednesday. I mean, these are warmer temperatures than you had all of last summer, whether it be June, July, and August. I mean, these are record-breaking days. They're not just, as they say, one day. To get 4 days in a row, which is really the definition of a heat wave, is 3 days in a row above 30. So this is quite exceptional. I mean, temperatures in Winnipeg should be a high of about 19, not 35 degrees. I mean, come on, that's like almost 20 degrees warmer than it should be for this time of the year. And nighttime temperatures, there's no relief. I mean, often in a dry climate, you can say, well, you got hot days, but you've got kind of cool nights for sleeping. Well, temperatures tonight, I mean, could be maybe going to stay above 21 degrees. There's a lot of tossing and turning with that. The other concern, Rosanna, is that heat it can be deadly. It can be very injurious to one's health. And what we find statistically, whether it be in Europe or in Canada, North America, anywhere, is that the first heat waves are the worst because people are not used to it. They haven't adapted to it. They haven't got their linens out. Maybe their fan is not working. Their air conditioner is still recovering from overuse of last year. They don't know how to make mint juleps. I mean, it's just the fact that people are not prepared for it. I mean, it should be hockey weather, not this kind of beach and muscle shirt and tank top kind of a weather, what we're seeing. This could be the warmest moment of the entire summer, and we still have 40 days to go before we get to the first day of summer. We've had a little test of summer. When real honest summer comes, we'll already be veterans of these summer wars. And so you'll know where the linen is. You'll know how to find a nice breeze or to find the cool shady spots. And so the health risks may not be as great. But quite spectacular, quite unusual because of the duration of the heat, the fact that the intensity of the heat is just making it something that would be in the dog days of summer, not the early part of May.
Could you explain a little bit more why this is so tough for farmers?
Certainly farmers like the heat. The fact in many times at this time of the year, they've had the moisture, but the soil is just not, it's so cold and the seeds are not taking. So you have almost the opposite situation. The heat is welcomed by farmers, but boy, they need the rain. I mean, it's almost a very dry, almost a drought-like kind of a situation they're facing. I mean, even if you got normal rainfall, it's not going to help. You need, when you've got this heat that's evaporating every bead of moisture that exists there in the ground and from the vegetation, it's just being sucked right out. And so there's more this ultra dry kind of a situation. So farmers are concerned because of the fact that the precipitation going into the growing season was so low. And then the heat has come, which is evaporating any moisture that existed there. So you're getting into a dry, almost droughty kind of situation. It's almost like a spring drought that you're seeing. And I can tell you that sucking sound that you hear come Thursday, Friday will be the soil just sucking all that moisture up from what it's going to get. There'll be nothing left to flow off the rivers. It'll all just be taken up by the soil.
With that, so more rain and like right now, like you mentioned, it is abnormally dry. So do you think it'll be enough rain? I know it's hard to say, but is it enough to pull us out of?
You need almost a monsoon to correct the situation. It's not going to be that. It's showers. Showers are like you drive along and you turn your windshield wipers on and you turn them on and then you turn them off. It's not going to be a drenching kind of rain. We don't know the amounts. That's still quite a ways away. There is even a chance today of a 30% chance of some moisture, some areas today, but it's 30%. I don't even carry an umbrella for 30%. But when you're getting to Thursday, it's just showers. That's a good word. I mean, showers means it's clearly going to be rain. Everyone's going to get it. And then we see Friday rain with a temperature of 5 degrees. It's going to be a cold rain when you get to there, but it's going to be a rain. It's going to be a wet rain. I don't know there's a dry rain, but hey, it's a wet rain and it'll be absolutely what the doctor ordered because it's been so dry and now so warm and really record breaking. I mean, it's not just a hot temperature. Every one of these last 4 days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, is probably going to break a record in Manitoba. And when I go back and look at the records for Manitoba, for Winnipeg, 150 years of record keeping, right back to 1874. And it's hard to find a time where the temperatures have been ever so warm and so persistently warm for so long. 1 day here, 1 day there, maybe 2 days if it's unusual, but 4 days, give me a break. I mean, 35 degrees come Tuesday. That's the forecasted high. It's going to be, exceptional and something that is just absolutely, you may not see another moment like that for the rest of the summer. Yet our forecast for the summer is showing warmer than normal. I mean, what you're seeing now is get used to it. It may be the kind of the dress rehearsal of what you're going to see more of this summer.
That is a climatologist David Phillips in conversation with CBC's Rosanna Hempel about the unusual heat, which will continue today. Right now, it is 6:26 a.m. and it's 23 degrees in Winnipeg. The hot spot, in case you're curious, in the province is Victoria Beach, which is sitting at 24 right now. And in Tuduli Lake, remember, we're in the same province, folks. Tuduli Lake, light snow and -2 currently, with freezing fog way up in Churchill. Well, next, let's have some music on the air. New music, actually, from Fozia. She always reminds me of the summer. She's got a lot of summertime hits, right? She's, of course, a Moroccan-Canadian pop artist, grew up in Carmen, Manitoba. Last year, she broke away from her label, though, so she's working on releasing her first album as an independent artist. This is the first song from the new project. It's a song about vulnerability. It's called Porcelain.
Take your heart somewhere else. I don't want any of it anymore. Keep it all to yourself. I don't want any of it anymore. It hurts me to say this, but it hurts me more to stay. My fingers are bleeding from picking up pieces you made of me. I can't let you in. My delicate skin is far too thin. Porcelain and your blade is sharp. You take it too far. It's just who you are. Cold cement and you can't resist. The iron fist, you come crashing down till I'm found in pieces, and then you fill with regret. But soon you'll forget, and I'm left a mess in your hands. I don't want sympathy. I just want anything that's left of me. Very least my sanity. I'm on my knees looking through all this debris. It hurts me to say this, but it hurts me more to stay. Oh, my fingers are bleeding from picking up pieces you made of me. Oh, I can't let you in. My delicate skin is far too thin. Porcelain and your blade is sharp. You take it too far. It's just who you are. Cold cement and you can't resist. With your iron fist, you come crashing down till I'm found in pieces, and then you're filled with regret. But soon you'll forget, and I'm left a mess in your hands again.
Fozia, new music from her called Porcelain. There was an old saying that said she could sing me the phone book. There's no phone book really anymore, but man, I sure love her voice. That is new music since she broke away and is now an independent artist. Her first album is soon to be out as an independent. Business news coming up soon here on CBC. Right now, though, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. We are under a heat warning yet again after setting a heat record yesterday. Today, back up to 35. Lots of sunshine, lots of wind again today. And an anxious few hours for people in Transcona yesterday as grass fire on Gun Road damaged buildings, forcing nearby businesses to evacuate. Carol Berry was at work when safety staff ordered people to leave the office as a precaution.
Oh, I was quite nervous, for sure, and then kind of going to the gray cloud was a little ominous, but, I just went around the other side.
Fire crews from Winnipeg and the arm of Springfield were on the scene for hours. Officials say high winds, dry conditions, and a lack of water supply in the area made battling the blaze difficult. Now, frightening moments as well for a Winnipeg woman who woke up to a grass fire behind her McPhillip Street home. Adela Streichart says it looked like the sky was on fire. She hopes people pay attention to fire burns, to the burn bans.
I didn't realize how seriously people should take fire bans. Now, you think it's just a precaution. It's not a precaution. It can just like that in a moment change hundreds of people's lives.
Streichart says the grass fire was put out in a couple of hours. The City of Winnipeg firefighters were called to other grass fires yesterday, 2 in the morning and 3 more in the afternoon. A grass fire has people in the Bird River area on the eastern side of the province on edge. The municipality of Alexander advising anyone between Hill Road and Bird River Bridge to leave their homes. The province recommends evacuations for those in the Bird River Cottage subdivisions and nearby Tanco Mine. Larry Lee lives 2 kilometers east of the Tanco Mine.
We saw a few people evacuating, perhaps 5 or 6 that we met on the road, and we saw probably 10 or 15 Tanco Mine employees driving north to get away from the area that Tanco Mine was in, which was within about 1 or 2 kilometers of the fire.
Lee planned to stay put last night, but had his bags packed just in case. Meanwhile, an agroclimate specialist says Manitoba farmers are making good time when it comes to seeding, despite the current heat wave and the risk of wildfires. Trevor Hadwin at Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada in Regina says some pockets of Manitoba are experiencing drought conditions. But overall, he says last fall's rains have left farmers in good shape when it comes to soil moisture.
I'm not too concerned right now. We need to be patient for those spring rains. We've had some decent rain in the past little bit. Certainly, we're looking at receiving some rain this week for parts of Manitoba. So if we get that rain and it becomes a little bit more than is forecasted, we'll be right back to in really good shape.
Hadwin says a bit of rain on the topsoil should help germinate crops, and those roots will then go down to the deeper soil moisture. Prime Minister Mark Carney unveils his new cabinet this morning. Sources tell CBC it is expected to be larger than his first cabinet, but could include a smaller core group of senior ministers and a secondary group of ministers of state. It remains to be seen whether any cabinet ministers will be from Manitoba. University of Manitoba political scientist Chris Adams says Carney will have to ensure a good mix of cabinet members from a variety of backgrounds.
It's a bit of a Rubik's Cube. You have to kind of figure out what all these pieces are and how they can come together into a good workable pattern for the Prime Minister.
MPs have started arriving in Ottawa for orientation week. Winnipeg West MP Doug Ailson landed in the nation's capital yesterday, and while he doesn't think he's being named to cabinet, Ailson says it is important to have all regions represented.
So that you don't have parts of the country that are left out. The cabinet decisions are not made sort of without the input of those regions. So I think it's very important for Manitoba, but for all regions.
Carney and his cabinet will be sworn in at 9:30 Central Time in Ottawa. You can hear more predictions coming up on World Report at 7. Should the public be allowed to speak in a council meeting? Last night, Thompson City Council debated whether to bring back a bylaw allowing the public to comment at the start of council meetings. The motion passed 4-2. Mayor Colleen Smook was one of the 2 members who voted against that comment period.
I will stick to my guns, and I may be in the minority, but I definitely believe that, trying new things is a good thing for council.
More than 30 people crammed into a small space at Thompson City Hall to hear the outcome. Most council meetings in that northern city only get 1 to 3 observers. Now to the Stanley Cup playoffs.
The Edmonton Oilers are 1 win away
for the Western Conference Final. A 3-0 shutout for Stuart Skinner and the Oilers in Game 4.
In Edmonton, that's the Oilers beating the Vegas Golden Knights in Game 4 of their best-of-7 semifinal. The Oilers now lead that series 3-1. On the schedule tonight, the Winnipeg Jets are in Dallas, needing a win over the Stars. Dallas leads the series 2-1. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day. Just head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
How exciting if you're in Edmonton.
No kidding.
Right? Yeah, no kidding. All right, go Jets go. We'll see what happens tonight. Thanks, Heath.
You're welcome.
I'm going to put my jersey on later. We're going to be talking to another fan who actually moved from here to Dallas. He says he's a little conflicted about who to cheer for. Right now, let's get into our forecast. Of course, it's an important one. We've been hearing in the news already about, a little bit about the conditions. But Abby's going to look through the regions now.
It's hot, it's smoky, and it's hazy across the southern part of the province, and we're seeing cooler temperatures in the northern part of the province. We do have freezing fog in Churchill at this time. In the Red River Valley region, we're looking at Winnipeg already sunny at 24. A heat warning is in effect for Winnipeg and all the way down to the U.S. border. It's going to be a hot day. We're warming up to 35 under sunny skies. Similar conditions we're seeing in the Pembina Valley region from Modern Winkler, Alton Morris, all the way down to Emerson. Temperatures around 23, 24 already now. The sun made its appearance, and we'll see temperatures warm up to the mid-30s also for that region. In the Westman region, Brandon is at 20 already at this time. Partly cloudy conditions. We're seeing the sun already trying to make its appearance. It's going to be mostly sunny today, warming up to a high of 29, and some windy conditions will come from the north to cool things down for folks in Brandon. In the Parkland region, sunny already. Dauphin is at 15. Today's high will reach 27 under mainly sunny skies. Expect light breeze from the north this afternoon. Gimli is currently at 20 degrees. The Interlake region is seeing some smoke in the air at this point, so we have that special air quality statement in effect that's tracking it into the power flame flan due to fires in the north. We'll see highs warming up to 27. Now, moving into the northern regions, let's start from the power flame flan surrounding areas. We're seeing these hazy skies and smoke in the air. Temperatures around 10 degrees at this time. We do have that special air quality statement in effect. Expect a mix of sun and clouds today. Highs near 17 degrees. In Thompson, 9 already, mostly cloudy skies. Expect cloudy conditions today. We do have a slight chance of showers for folks in Thompson today with breezy north winds, highs around 13 degrees. And then tracking it further north into Churchill, that's the interesting one. Temperatures around 0 at this time. We have freezing fog for folks in Churchill. You'd stay at 0 for most of the day. Rain or showers, rain or snow is actually expected in Churchill today. That would transform into snow as you get into the afternoon, and Churchill will be seeing about 2 to 4 centimeters of snow. So prepare for that. The wind chill feels like -8. So it's, hot down south, smoky in the middle part of the province, and chilly up north.
That's my word for it. It's wild. Right? All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you, Mercy. I don't even know what to say.
Poor Abby. He had a long weekend, and now he's got all these things to get through.
Compared to Winnipeg, 35 degrees, the heat we're getting. Now we're having freezing. We're having snow in the northern part of the province.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's remind people here, just out of the heat thing, Corey and I, hearing about the heat down south here. Corey, you and I were talking yesterday about the water stations. So I'm going to look those up. So after your commute, I'll just mention where they are once again.
Yeah. So far, no major issues on the commute. I will give the most Canadian traffic update ever in terms of canoe traffic, worth mentioning actually. So the
premier, like a canoe.
A canoe, yes, with a C. Oh, you're funny.
Thank you.
So the Caddy Lake tunnels. There's actually the famous Caddy Lake tunnels. If you've ever been on a canoe trip, they're great. But there was actually a rocks that kind of fell, and they were obstructing it. And now starting today, actually, crews are working on that first tunnel to actually get those rocks out of there, and that's expected expected to last today until Friday. So if you're planning canoe trips this week until Friday in the Caddy Lake tunnels, you won't be able to get through because there's crews working on that. So heads up, that's starting today until Friday. But if you have any other updates for me on the highways or the roads or the canoe routes, trails.
It's a very summer report.
A
but
very
it feels
summer
like
report.
It
Yeah,
feels like
it is that time of year. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. That number to call, 204-788-3093.
Could be people up early for the long weekend, I guess. You're going to get the better part of the weather for that kind of thing.
Yeah, people would like to snag those early campsites too. So.
All right, let's talk about the problems here, though. Because of the heat, you may need water. And so the city does have water stations that are open right now around the city of Winnipeg during these unusual and unseasonably high temperatures. So they're in and around Mount Carmel Clinic, Siloam Mission, as well as Agape Table near Nadinaway as well. So Disraeli, Furby, Princess, and Main Street. You'll find water that is available to you there. And the city also encourages you to look at community centers and libraries that are open that can help you cool off through the day as we get to that hot daytime high of 35 again today. Crystalie Ramlakan is here next with our business report on CBC. Hi.
Hey, good morning, Marcy.
So how are the markets reacting to the United States and China coming to this trade truce we've been talking about?
So news of the 90-day tariff rollback propelled markets higher yesterday, but the surge was more pronounced south of the border than here in Canada. So the S&P TSX went up 174 points after racing up more than 370 points earlier in the day yesterday. And then in New York, the Dow went up more than 1,100 points. The S&P 500 was up 184 points, and the NASDAQ went up 779 points, or 4.4%. So the big winners on Wall Street were semiconductor and tech stocks, as well as apparel and travel names that have been hardest hit with these U.S.-China tariffs. And here in Canada, on Bay Street, tech, energy, and base metal stocks led the gains. But gold, which investors often flock to as a safe haven, was walloped on the TSX. Now, going into the weekend, market watchers had not expected much out of these tariff talks between the U.S. and China. So the de-escalation between the world's two largest economies was pretty surprising. But to gauge how sustainable this rally is going to be, analysts will be looking beyond these day-to-day tariff headlines to upcoming economic data around inflation and employment.
Up next on the Business News Report this morning, a beleaguered Canadian electric vehicle maker might be getting a lifeline.
Yeah, that's right. So a group of investors has submitted a revised offer to buy Quebec-based Lion Electric, which has manufactured electric school buses and trucks. So the offer comes after the Quebec government refused to inject any more public money into the company, which actually caused an earlier transaction with these investors to fall through. So the company sought creditor protection in December and has been looking for a new buyer. And earlier this month, the company said it would very likely be liquidated. So, what changed here? Well, the buyers have reached an agreement with the Quebec government to renew a recently expired subsidy program. And it had offered help for school bus operators to afford the higher cost of electric buses. And this program has been integral to Lion's success in Quebec, where the government has required that all new school buses be electric since 2021. So the company shut down production at a plant in Illinois last year after undergoing several rounds of layoffs. It has now laid off all but 12 of its employees, but it is now hoping to finalize this deal by the end of the week.
And I understand the price of Apple iPhones could be going up.
Yes, so the Wall Street Journal is reporting the tech giant is weighing price hikes for its upcoming fall iPhone lineup, but is keen to avoid linking any increases to U.S. tariffs on imports from China, where most of its devices are assembled. So as we just talked about, Washington and Beijing have agreed to slash reciprocal tariffs, but Chinese imports will still be subject to a 30% levy in the U.S. Those tariffs aren't going completely away yet. And raising prices could help Apple cushion higher costs stemming from those tariffs that have hampered global supply chains and forced the company to shift more production to India. So Apple said earlier this month that tariffs were expected to add $900 million in costs during just the second quarter, and that it would source a majority of the iPhones sold in the US from India during that period. So for months, analysts have speculated about price increases, but have warned that could cause the company to lose market share, especially as rivals such as Samsung have, tried to attract customers with new AI features that Apple has actually been slower to roll out. And some analysts have projected a price increase of 43%.
Whew.
That is quite a bit, yeah, especially when, iPhone's already about $1,000, right? So the Journal report says Apple has been considering coupling prices with new features and design changes, including an ultra-thin design, which could help justify the increases.
What do the numbers say this morning, Crystalie?
So in Europe, stocks are edging higher. Germany is up, the UK is up, France is up. In Asia, markets are mixed. Japan is up, Shanghai is up, Hong Kong is down. Oil is up 54 cents to $62.49 US per barrel. Gold is up $19.50 to $3,256.20 US per ounce. And the dollar is down 0.05 of a cent to 71.5 cents US.
All right, Crystalie, talk to you tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
With our business news, that's Crystalie Ramlakan. Well, she, of course, throughout her report was alluding to the trade war, its impact on business and relationships. Some things in our life are beyond our control, like a trade war, and also like food inflation. And it can, at the individual level, make you feel a little helpless. But next on CBC, as Danielle Nerman finds, some Canadians are taking charge in one place that they can, their own backyards.
Bill Belzy is sorting through a pile of colorful seed packets.
I'm going to start off with some lettuce and probably put in some radishes and a few carrots. And if I can...
He's ready to get his hands dirty and grow some veggies on his patio.
We just have a planter box in the back, but you get a lot of food out of a little space. So, yeah, that's the plan.
Like a lot of Canadians, Bill is looking for ways to bring down his grocery bill and bring his elbows up.
You know, when Trump announced all of his various endless announcements about what at least I interpreted as sort of economic warfare against Canada, it took me back to my parents' generation.
Bill's father fought in World War II. His mom stayed behind in Kingston, Ontario, and grew a victory garden.
You can help win the battle of food production if you grow your own victory garden in 1943.
And I got thinking about that a little bit, and it just dawned on me that, look, I can't change world events, but there are things I can do, and this is one of those.
You can have your own fresh vegetables on your table this summer if you have your own victory garden.
So food was seen as a way of fighting against your enemy.
Debbie Goodwin is the Canadian author of a book called A Victory Garden for Trying Times. She says during World War I and World War II, thousands of Brits and North Americans planted victory gardens. Governments gave people seeds, tools, and instructions on how to yield a bountiful harvest.
So it was creating a supply of food that would last a family of 5 through the summer and also carry you through the fall, if not the whole winter.
After the wars, many victory gardens disappeared. But Debbie says they always crop up again in times of crisis.
So in the OPEC crisis of 1973, you had people going back to their backyard gardens. You had public gardens being created. The first summer of the pandemic, 2020, seed companies couldn't keep up on demand.
And it's happening again.
Yeah, like my staff has been stressed. So it's like 16 hours days.
Manish Kushwaha owns Gaia Organic Seeds in Ottawa. He says usually by now, gardeners have bought all their seed. But
I'm seeing like consistent orders like every few days. I'm like, oh wow, this is interesting. So yeah, I correlate that 100% to tariff.
since Trump's trade war kicked off in February, two of Canada's biggest packet seed companies, West Coast Seeds and Ontario Seed, have seen a 20% increase in sales. Whether you're planting a victory garden to fight a trade war or beat the rising cost of food, it will take time and money. But Debbie Goodwin says it's worth it, if only for the free therapy.
I take all my emotions into the garden. When I'm angry, I weed. And when I'm happy, I water. You can forget what time it is. You can forget what's going on in your house. You can forget what's going on in the world when you're in the garden.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Danielle Nerman.
9 minutes now to 7 o'clock on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us. You're in Information Radio this morning. Well, I'll tell you what, if you have anything planted out there, it's going to be smiling if trees can do so. All of this humidity and heat, and then if you give them a bit of a water, everything's just sprouting and budding and looking beautiful. Looks like the middle of the summer already in Winnipeg. The thing is, it will get cold, so be careful what you put in the ground, because by the weekend we could see overnight lows of 0 again, which is more seasonal for this time of year. Winnipeg currently is 23 degrees. Our high today is 35. Well, as you've been hearing on the national news this morning, Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to unveil his new cabinet today at Rideau Hall. And we're watching for Manitoba faces. So our CBC national reporter Chris Rands has been on the lookout, and he spotted Doug Elfson, the MP for Winnipeg West. But Doug Elfson, as you may have heard on the news, said he was there for orientation. We'll find out later if that's true. Alex Ballingall is Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star, and he's here to set up the day. Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So the term that I'm hearing that we might not, have heard before is that there's going to be a tiered structure to Carney's cabinet. What does it mean?
So basically, it is a resurrection of a practice that we'd last seen in the early years of Stephen Harper's prime ministership. So it's been almost 20 years since we've had this. It might be a slightly different version that Carney has in mind. Basically, they're saying there's going to be up to 10 what they're calling secretaries of state in this cabinet, or sort of in this cabinet. And they're going to be MPs that are deployed to work on very specific government priorities. I wasn't able to figure out what those priorities are yet, but we'll find out today, I assume. But, something like internal trade or something like some international issue where they're just exclusively focused on that. And then they're sworn into the Privy Council, so like the club of cabinet ministers, but they don't sit in every cabinet meeting. That'll be reserved to the smaller group of kind of core senior cabinet ministers of finance, global affairs, the traditional kind of portfolios. And then these junior ministers will come into cabinet when their specific issue is on the agenda. So they're kind of like quasi cabinet ministers devoted to specific things in the interest of having a smaller, tighter, what the PMO is saying, more focused governing council for Carney. So,
I'll ask you about names that you're thinking about in a moment, but I want to go right to the West because we're in the West. In light of increasing talk out of Alberta about Western separation, how important is it going to be to include ministers from the West and from the prairies?
I mean, I think that's part of the art of cabinet making at the federal level in Canada. Always is regional representation. Not just in the West, but everywhere, and even sort of diverse community, religious and ethnic communities as well. So, that's always a big focus. But yeah, as you say, there's this kind of spasm of separatist sentiment that's being aired in Alberta right now. How that's dealt with will be interesting. I was talking to one of the MPs, like the Liberals have an MP in Calgary now, MP in Edmonton. There's one in northern Saskatchewan. You mentioned a few in Manitoba as well. But, speaking of Alberta, Carney's from Edmonton. He's from the Northwest Territories, born in Northwest Territories, grew up in Edmonton. So there's a bit of, for what it's worth, I guess, Western roots at the top of the pyramid here. But yeah, I think that's something to watch for, how they get that regional representation. But I think for the people that are kind of fanning the flames of this idea of separation in Alberta, it's almost more about kind of like climate policies and policies that they blame for, not letting the oil and gas industry grow even further.
And not feeling supported by the previous government.
And not exactly. So it's more about policies, maybe potentially than regional representation, but that's obviously an element of it, I think. So it's something to watch for.
You think that Carney will learn from some of the things that on the election trail we were hearing from voters? Like there were seniors, there were those talking about labor, women saying that, they felt like in his first initial sort of quick cabinet he put together that they weren't represented. Is he likely to expand what he put together in that sort of quick cabinet that he had to sort of have before the election was called?
Potentially. So there was 23 members of that cabinet, of that kind of, provisional Carney cabinet, if we can call it that. I was told yesterday by the Prime Minister's office that this one will have less than 30, but that includes up to 10 of these secretaries of state. So it's not clear what portfolios will be represented, what won't. There was definitely a push to have a minister of women and gender equality that existed under the Trudeau government. I don't know if that becomes one of these secretaries of state, or if that's a full portfolio kind of departmental minister, or if there's one at all, like there wasn't in the March version of the Carney cabinet. So something to watch for as well. In
our last minute here, I actually am going to leave World Report to tell us about the names, because that's what their whole report's on this morning. I want to ask you about this win, because the Liberals won another seat in Quebec, Alex, right? So the Liberals are 2 seats shy of a majority. They won by 1 vote. How many recounts are still left then?
There's a small handful, 3 or 4, I think. I don't know the exact number, but as I understand it, that doesn't give them a path to majority, even if they all go the way of the Liberals. There's at the moment, they're 2 seats shy, just kind of a hair shy of the majority that I think a lot of them almost expected to get on election night. So we'll have to see. I think that the narrow margin there has fueled a lot of speculation about whether they'll do something to inspire somebody from the opposition to cross the floor and join the governing party. But regardless, they're on the knife's edge between majority and minority, which is an interesting political situation. Who gets elected speaker is kind of more consequential for those numbers. Somebody like Elizabeth May, the sole Green seat, it becomes an interesting voice potentially in certain scenarios. So it's an interesting political dynamic, regardless of how all that shakes out.
Thank you very much this morning. Appreciate having you on.
Of course, anytime. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's Alex Ballingall. He's a Deputy Ottawa Bureau Chief for the Toronto Star. So World Report's coming up in a moment. We'll hear some of the names expected, new guard, old guard, who might be in this cabinet. Heather Wells is here now, though, with local updates from Manitoba.
Good morning. Well, an anxious few hours for people in Transcona yesterday as a grass fire on Gun Road damaged buildings and forced nearby businesses to evacuate. Carol Barry at work when safety staff ordered her to evacuate her office as a precaution. She says it was nerve-wracking. Frightening moments as well for a Winnipeg woman waking up to a grass fire behind her McPhillip Street home. We'll hear from her as well. And Adela Streichhardt hopes people pay attention to burn bans in the city. So more on the fires, the very latest, coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
And so no solid fuel burning in the city of Winnipeg. That means you can gas fire pit, a barbecue, but no coal, no wood burning fires, certainly. There's ATV bans in some of the back roads as well. There is a heat warning for southern Manitoba. It does include Winnipeg. There is an air quality statement warning for areas around Victoria Beach and Bissett, and also around the Paw, of course, where we saw those wildfires earlier. Winnipeg's 23 degrees right now already. We're going to hit 35 today. Winds are south 40 to 60. Watch for water stations around town if you need them, and we'll have lots of sunshine. In the next hour of the show, she lost her brother to an unprovoked violent attack by strangers in Winnipeg 4 years ago. Now she's hoping to promote healing and justice by drawing attention to the realities that Indigenous men and boys face. There's a special walk today around this. We're going to hear her story, though, in the next hour and her call for justice. In addition, in the next hour of the show, residents of the RM of St. Clements are mobilizing to save a well in their community. We'll hear what's going on there. And then a Brandon woman will share that she had so much trouble finding adult friends in Brandon. She posted about her struggles, and she had 50,000 people on Facebook who were connecting.
Today on The Current.
So I think martial arts has actually a really powerful and important place in today's world.
Mixed martial arts made a comeback in Montreal in a huge way this weekend with the first UFC event in that city in a decade. What has led to the sport's massive popularity with young men and how politics has entered the ring, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. There will be some new faces and some familiar ones at Rideau Hall this morning. Mark Carney's new cabinet is being sworn in. The Prime Minister's office says it will be slimmer than the cabinets of his predecessor, Justin Trudeau. But Carney is adding some junior ministers or secretaries of state into the mix. And every province, plus the North, will be represented. Rafi Boudjikanian reports.
Are you in cabinet? Newly minted Liberal MP for Toronto Centre Evan Solomon picking up his luggage at Ottawa International Airport, not quite issuing a denial about whether he's getting into cabinet.
Nothing to say, just here to find some place to live.
Spotted as well at arrivals, New Brunswick's Wayne Long says he is not getting in.
I'm just up here to do my riding's work.
But senior Liberal sources have told CBC News Long is becoming a minister or secretary of state. The Prime Minister's office has said Mark Carney is adding 10 such junior roles to the cabinet. Some of the ministers will be the new faces that got elected along with Carney, such as former Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson, who will take on housing, and former chair of Hydro One Timothy Hodgson, who becomes Natural Resources and Energy Minister, replacing Jonathan Wilkinson, who is out of cabinet. Carney's office says there will be fewer than 30 full-time cabinet ministers, and he's committing to gender parity.
I'm really looking to see, the gender balance.
Michelle Cadario was Deputy Chief of Staff for former Prime Minister Paul Martin. She hopes women are not overrepresented in the new junior roles.
Is it just kind of plugging holes with these secretaries of state?
Carney is keeping some old ministers. Chrystia Freeland will stay on, so will Stephen Guilbeault, as well as Sean Fraser, who is moving to Justice. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Honda says it is postponing its large-scale investments in Canada. Just last year, the auto manufacturer announced plans to build a $15 billion electric vehicle supply chain in Ontario, part of an agreement it reached with the Ontario and federal governments. But in the company's report for the past fiscal year, Honda says the growth of the EV market has slowed more than initially expected. It also says Honda's profits are expected to fall in this fiscal year due to U.S. tariffs on vehicles from Canada and Mexico. U.S. President Donald Trump arrives at the royal court in Saudi Arabia. He is once again greeted by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The two met earlier in the day on the tarmac after Air Force One landed. This is day one of a 4-day visit to the Middle East, and it is expected to be a lucrative trip. Trump has brought along some high-profile business leaders, including Elon Musk. In the backdrop of this trip are renewed efforts by the United States to end the war in Gaza. CBC correspondent Chris Brown is following Trump's visit in Riyadh.
Donald Trump's visit here feels like an enormous trade fair. I'm at the Saudi-U.S. Investment Forum in Riyadh. It's the centerpiece of this deal-signing bonanza that Trump has been touting. The Saudis are trying to transition their country from one largely focused on producing oil to an economy that's much more diverse. And all around me, they have these large-scale models of some of these so-called giga projects, such as a huge cube that's now being built in the middle of Riyadh that they say will not only be the tallest building in the world when it's done, but also the largest overall. Trump stepped off Air Force One and was met by the de facto ruler here, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, whose vision is driving this transition. MBS, as he's called, hosted a big lunch full of the world's top business leaders, and later the two men will attend a variety of business events on this day. But while Trump seems very comfortable in this part of the world, there are key issues that he and his Saudi hosts disagree on, namely the war in Gaza. Saudi officials want Trump to put more pressure on Israel to end its attacks on Gaza and to let humanitarian aid and food into the besieged territory. Negotiators for Israel, along with mediators, are meeting next door today in Qatar, and Trump's team is hoping that there will be some momentum after Hamas's release yesterday of an American-Israeli hostage, so that ceasefire talks might possibly lead somewhere. Chris Brown, CBC News in Riyadh.
500,000 people in Gaza are in danger of starvation, and the entire Palestinian territory is experiencing high levels of acute food insecurity. It's all carefully detailed in the latest snapshot from the IPC, the leading global authority on hunger. Crystal Gomansing has more on what aid workers are seeing on the ground.
All the children I'm seeing here in Gaza are really desperate and living in the most awful conditions.
Jonathan Cricks is with UNICEF. He describes seeing 10 babies in Nasser Hospital wasting away, too exhausted from hunger to cry out.
It's not difficult to understand when we've been 10 weeks, more than 2 months, without a single package of humanitarian aid entering the Gaza Strip.
The IPC, the body that tracks and reports on hunger, says nearly 500,000 people in Gaza are experiencing catastrophic levels of hunger. If nothing changes, famine is the likely outcome. Bushra Khalid is with Oxfam and based in Ramallah.
Gaza is literally 2 hours away from where I am right now. There's an abundance of food, meters away from children literally crying at the soup kitchens.
On March 2nd, Israel shut all border crossings into Gaza. At the time, Israeli officials said they were imposing maximum pressure on Hamas so they'd return the hostages and relinquish power. Israel also accuses Hamas of stealing aid meant for civilians. Khalid says everyone needs to ask themselves some hard questions.
So what if that's the military objective? Do we then starve 1 million children? Is that then the response? Is that a reasonable response?
World leaders have been urging both sides to agree to a ceasefire, release all of the hostages, and let aid in. Crystal Gomansing, CBC News, London.
Montreal public health officials are calling for better access to tuberculosis care. There was a sharp rise in the number of cases reported last year. 203 new cases compared to an average of 123 cases each year over the previous decade. Benoit Courriveau is a physician with Montreal Public Health.
The increase that we saw last year is mainly explained by migration. In most cases, people contracted the tuberculosis in their country of origin, for instance, and then they're more at risk of developing it a few years later.
The annual report says most of the recent cases involved people who were born outside Canada. Canadian tobacco companies will start to pay out billions of dollars this year as part of a class action lawsuit. In total, $32 billion will be paid out over the next 20 years, most of that to provinces and territories. Newfoundland and Labrador has put its entire portion into this year's budget. It is an election year. As Peter Cowan reports, experts are questioning that approach.
That's probably one of the lowest in the country.
Newfoundland and Labrador's finance minister has touted just how small the province's $372 million deficit is this year. But what Siobhan Cody didn't mention was the deficit would have been almost double if it wasn't for the settling of a decades-long court battle with tobacco companies.
There's a large tobacco settlement, which is about $500 million.
The Deputy Minister of Finance, Michelle Jewer, says it took the total amount of the settlement and put it into this year's budget, even though the actual amount will be paid out over 20 years. It's the only province to do it this way. Other provinces like Quebec and PEI are adding the amount they expect to actually receive this year, or they told CBC they're still studying how to account for this.
The government's up for re-election.
Ian Lee, who's a professor of business management at Ottawa's Carleton University, says politics may have influenced how Newfoundland and Labrador treated this.
The temptation is, hey, we'll take it all into revenues and we'll make the situation look much better than it really is.
The province says it's following accounting standards, but it'll be up to the Auditor General to decide if this follows the rules. Lee isn't convinced these payments are a sure thing.
Whether or not they'll be around to pay this money is very, very uncertain.
What's more certain, a provincial election is scheduled for October. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
The 78th Cannes Film Festival opens today in France, and one of Hollywood's favorite action stars will be there. Tom Cruise will be promoting his latest Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Spike Lee will also be premiering his latest film, Highest to Lowest. And it's all happening at a time when the film industry is under threat, with U.S. President Donald Trump calling for tariffs on any movie made outside the United States. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, we have another very hot day on the way for Winnipeg and across most of the province today. We're going to have challenges with heat, with air quality advisories, and we're watching fires. What an unusual time of year this is for us in terms of heat records being broken, including in Winnipeg yesterday, breaking a 67-year-old record. Hi, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio live from downtown Winnipeg on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. Well, in addition to covering what's going on with those issues, today on the show, in the first hour, we're going to hear from residents of the rural municipality of St. Clements, or one resident there, rather. A group of them, though, are mobilizing. They're trying to save a well in their community, so stay tuned. We'll hear more about it. Also, we're going to take you to Brandon and hear from a woman there who says she's had so much trouble finding adult friends. She posted about her struggle on a local 50,000-person Facebook group in hopes of finding someone to connect with. We'll hear what happened after that. And then to a serious story. Today, Winnipeggers will walk to honor and raise awareness for missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys. It's an issue that advocates say does not get enough attention. We have an interview coming up with a family member of a man who was killed in an unprovoked attack while he was riding his bike here in Winnipeg. Stay tuned, and we will hear more from his sister. So stay tuned. That's coming up. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's here with other news headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a grass fire has people in the Bird River area on edge. The RM of Alexander advised anyone between Hill Road and Bird River Bridge to leave their homes, and the province recommends evacuations for those in the Bird River Cottage subdivisions and the nearby Tanko mine. Meanwhile, the province says crews are fighting a separate fire in Nopaming Provincial Park. Officials say as of yesterday, that fire was about 400 hectares in size. The city of Winnipeg also, many people concerned after a number of grass fires. There was one big one in Transcona near Gun Road, which damaged buildings and forced nearby businesses to evacuate. As well, a Winnipeg woman had a fire right behind her house on McPhillips. So we'll hear from them as well in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, there's a bit of good news right now in the forecast and current conditions, Abby.
Yeah, we're looking at cooler temperatures already arriving in the northern part of the province. Thompson currently seeing light rain with temperatures around 9 degrees at this time. So that should bring a kind of relief. I hope it pushes this good fortune towards the Flin Flon area to really douse the fires that we're seeing in that region. But for now, cool temperatures we're seeing in Thompson, and we have snow in Churchill. So it will be a relief for folks in the north. But down south, the heat warning is still in effect for Winnipeg and surrounding areas. It's going to be a kind of very hot one for us down south today. Temperatures reaching the mid-30s. At this time, we're already at 23 in the cities. The sun made its appearance. It will be warm and sunny with a bit of windy conditions from the south later. We climb to 35 degrees today, so make sure you stay cool and hydrate. And across Westman, Parkland, Interlake region, we're seeing smoky conditions. Temperatures at this time sitting between 20 and 24 degrees.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
So, Corey, you got sweaty baby at home?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. We took her out yesterday, and we had to shade her. We had to lather it up with sunscreen, and she was just she was smiling, but she was just like, oh.
My nephew ran hot when he was a baby, and he had lots of hair, and it would always just be it looked like he was at some kind of rave, some kind of overnight party, but sweaty, and his arms would be flailing around.
My toddler's
Poor
he insisted I carry him the whole way home from daycare yesterday because he was like, it's so hot.
Yeah.
I don't want to walk. Yeah.
It is, Abby's right. Find some water. Remember the sunscreen, all that stuff. Send a hat with all the kids that are school age. Okay, let's get into what's happening in the morning commute.
Yeah, a few things to keep an eye out for, particularly on the highway. So Highway 1 westbound, just west of Carberry, is closed. It was closed as of 11 p.m. last night due to what the province is calling a police incident. We don't know any other details other than that. As well, here in the city, Gun Road from Plessis to Redonda, all the lanes are closed due to that fire in Transcona right now. As well, Highway 13, both directions between Bird River Bridge and 340 14 are also closed due to a fire. And a reminder as well, I mentioned the very Canadian traffic update. Caddy Lake tunnels, the first tunnel is closed as of today because of rocks that have fallen. Crews are going to be clearing that. If you're planning a canoe trip, it's going to be closed until the 16th. But if you are planning a canoe trip, just also keep in mind in the Whiteshell right now, especially Caddy Lake area, there actually is an active fire just across the Ontario border now that which you can see from Caddy Lake. So just heads up, be very, very careful if you're heading to the Whiteshell area right now, because I know a lot of cottagers are on alert right now as that fire burns just across the Ontario border in the Ingulph Long Pine Lake area. But if you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I alluded to, over 700 St. Clement's residents have mobilized right now in hopes of saving a local water source. An effort to save the Beconia well, it dates back to 2020. The effort dates back to then, rather. The province says the well is not in compliance with the Groundwater and Water Well Act because it's old. It can't be turned off when it's not in use, and the water's not treated to make sure it's safe to drink. The well is set to be sealed in September this year. Ian Hailstone and his family have been using the well for decades, and with the help of his wife, he created a Facebook group. It's called Save the Beconia Well, and he joins us this morning via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what was your initial reaction when you heard the Beconia Well received an official sealing order?
Well, it's shocking because we have subdivisions out here that don't have access to water. Many residents, like if you're on the west side of PR 500 along the lake, you can drill wells all day long and you won't hit water.
What has the well meant to you and your family? When do you first remember using this?
Approximately 30 years ago, when we first came here, we used it.
And do you use it currently? Like, what is it used for, given that there's concerns with the drinking water and such?
Well, the well, to my understanding, has never failed a test. There's many citizens out here that use it regularly, like, upwards of over 400, I would say. But there's also many people that come here from Manitoba and all over Manitoba to use it.
Why do you think that the Beconia Well holds so much importance to the residents of St. Clement's?
Well, I mean, water is important to people. It's actually a right. So, we should have the same right as everybody else. But, there's also other wells, in Manitoba, around Lake Winnipeg, that flow the same way. It's only the Beconia Well they seem to have an issue with.
Did you expect your Facebook group? I should ask what your reaction was when your Facebook group gained this much traction.
Well, a lot of people use the well. It's important to a lot of people. A lot of people want the natural water. Like I say, I don't understand. It's never failed to test what the issue is with it.
There are reports from the province. One of the issues they say from the province and the RM, there are reports showing the well wastes $11 million of 11 million liters rather of water annually because it can't be turned off. What's your response to that?
Well, I mean, that's false because there's a marsh, the Beconia Marsh, and it's been in the press before about issues with the marsh. Is directly behind it. It supports the Beconia Marsh and wetlands. I mean, the health of Lake Winnipeg depends on the marshes around the lake. There's a lawsuit between the province and I believe the Southern Chiefs right now, with the health of the lake. Like, you need these marshes. Now, if you're going to turn the water source off to that marsh, it's going to end up dying like the other marshes that they're trying to revive with taxpayers' dollars.
So you don't see the $11 million of runoff as a waste. You see it as supporting the marshlands.
Definitely. I mean, the 11 million liters, if that's what it is, we don't know exactly what it is, but if that's what it is, there's when people do any kind of development or you need an environmental assessment. I don't understand why the province doesn't seem to be held to the same standard as what taxpayers are held to.
I need to correct myself here just because I keep misspeaking. 11 million liters of runoff. And I think I've been misspeaking and saying $11 million. So just to be clear here, we're talking about amounts of water, of course. The province did make a series of suggestions here to look at what could help in the area, Ian. And I know that that one of the suggestions does include drilling a new well. What are your thoughts on that as a potential plan?
I'm fine with a new well as long as there's a truckload facility attached to it for the people here in all these subdivisions that have to haul water. I mean, the RM of St. Clements seems to think it's acceptable for people to drive 60 kilometers one way to a water fill station in East Selkirk and drive back here, with their water. Well, it's not acceptable.
The reports, I just want to go back to the reports about safety, because there are a lot of, when we look through what the province's concerns are, there are a lot of concerns about, the ability to disinfect the water. So they're even saying if they put the new system in, it would require permits, operating license, but it could potentially operate without disinfection under an approved compliance, but then eventually they'd have to add disinfection. So what are your thoughts on the concerns, once again, just to revisit some of the concerns they have about drinking the water?
Well, I mean, regulations are regulations. I have no control over the regulations, but there's no reason why the well can't be declared, a historical site, and left, flowing the same way as the ones are on the other side of the lake. I don't understand what the issue is. It's like I say, it's supporting a marsh. It just doesn't make sense to me.
If the province, you've somewhat answered this by what you just said. I was going to ask you, if the province does follow through and they seal the well this fall, what would you hope becomes of the Baconia well? But you're suggesting a historic site in some way.
Well, I would hope it would become a historical site before that happens. I mean, in my opinion, this seems like selective enforcement. Whether it is or not, I'm not sure, but that's sure what it seemed like to me when you have other wells around the lake that, are flowing. You have other semi-public wells around the lake that have been semi-public wells longer than the Baconia well.
What's it been like waiting 5 years to understand what they're going to do with this?
Well, it's very frustrating. I mean, I don't believe that we're getting treated fairly, by the RM or the province. And I mean, that's my opinion, but I don't feel it's right. What's happening?
Thank you for being with us and outlining your concerns this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That is Ian Hailstone joining us this morning. He's the creator of the Save the Baconia Well Facebook group and a resident of the Arm of St. Clements. The Arm of St. Clements did also send CBC a 3-page letter about the well. In it, I alluded to much of this in the interview, but they say they have been looking for a solution since 2020, but, quote, the well, as it had been operating, is no longer acceptable according to provincial legislation. It goes on to say we have been in communication and constant contact with the province of Manitoba during this time and have explored various options the council felt would be in the best interest of the community. The situation escalated this year with the issuance of a formal well sealing order from the province. That came in February 18th, 2025. This order requires the Arm of St. Clements to decommission the Baconia well by September 2nd, 2025. So by this fall, we're going to know what's going to be happening in this part of Manitoba with this story, which, as you heard, many residents are paying very close attention to in that area. It is 7:23 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 990 a.m. on the app and YouTube. Just a traffic update. Megan Ketcherson called our studio. She's out in the Transcona area right now, and she does confirm that Gun Road is now open. So she is there because of the aftermath of the fires that have been burning there and what's been happening this morning. So Gun Road is now open. By the way, Transcona Councillor Russ Wyatt is going to join us in the next hour of Information Radio. He is coming up on the show here after 8. It is 7:23 a.m. We've got time to slide in a couple minutes of music at least. Here are the Vaniers and Pigeons.
She wish we never said, and yet it makes no difference to an end.
Well, if you're trying to beef up your Canadian playlist, you might consider this tune. This is the Vaniers. They're from Toronto. They're an indie rock band. They're actually made up of former high school classmates. They're working on their second LP. It's called So Good, So Bad. This is Pigeons from it, if you're checking it out. It's 23 degrees right now in Winnipeg, a high of 35 today, unheard of. We broke records yesterday, could happen again today. Be careful out there. Air quality statements being issued for around the Paw and up around Victoria Beach as well. And then we also have the heat warning that does include the city of Winnipeg. Water stations are open around the city as well. Please go to their website, cityofwinnipeg.ca, to find out more about that. Well, let's talk about what's going to be heating up on the ice tonight. Scott Reguera is here with Morning Sports. Good morning.
Hey, Marcy.
So what are the Jets saying as they try and tie up their series with Dallas tonight?
Well, just what a pivotal game this stands to be. A win this evening in Dallas, Marcy, would effectively turn this into a best-of-3 series with home ice going to Winnipeg. A loss, and their season's on the brink. Getting that win, though, could prove difficult, given that they haven't yet won on the road this postseason. In fact, the Jets are the only team that can claim that at this point. Despite that, winger Cole Perfetti says the team is in good spirits heading in to tonight's contest.
We haven't played a full 60 on the road yet, and that's on us. Like, we've done it at home, and we've taken care of business there, and now we got to do it on the road. Obviously, there's tough environments, but that's the plus. If you want to win the Stanley Cup, you got to win on the road. So we got to figure that out, and I think we have all the confidence in the world. We were the best team in the league, so there's no lack of confidence in our group and in that room.
Yeah, Perfetti's right about that. Nobody had as many road wins during the regular season as the Jets did. It's been bizarre how it's turned around in the postseason. So hopefully some success tonight. Puck drop is at 7 o'clock. We also have PWHL action to look forward to after that quadruple overtime thriller. Montreal looks to make it to 2 wins in a row against the Ottawa Charge tonight.
And the Oilers. I got to mention the Oilers. My goodness.
Of course, yeah. And Stuart Skinner, for all the flack that he's gotten and replaced as the starting goalie by Calvin Pickard, he comes in and gets a shutout last night over Vegas, 24 saves. He was great. The Oilers as a whole were fantastic. Mm-hmm. And here they are, Marcy, as a result of that victory. 1 win away from the Final Four. We all want to see the Jets-Oilers in the next round, right?
We all want to see the Jets-Oilers. I'll feel like I was a little kid sitting there watching Jets-Oilers.
Yes.
So much history.
Yeah. You and I both.
Jets 1.0, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to Edmonton if that happens.
All right.
Be alerted.
I'll book my ticket, too. We'll talk later about that.
Wouldn't it be nice?
Yeah,
we'll see. Well, we got to start with tonight. To another grueling sport, though, tennis, where one of Canada's best players has been working hard to get back into top form.
Yeah, and where Bianca Andreescu is concerned, Marcy, top form really means top. This country's only ever winner of a Grand Slam singles title. Andreescu's dealt with one injury after another since that U.S. Open triumph back in 2019. And it's led her to making some pretty drastic dietary changes ahead of this week's Italian Open.
I'm being a good girl in Rome, sticking to my diet, to the gluten-free, dairy-free, coffee-free as well, so that's been difficult. But for me, having that discipline is really helping me on the court. I think preparation is key, and if I feel very prepared, I've won half the battle. So, I mean, the food's still good without the gluten and the dairy, so I'm not complaining.
It's worked for her. She's beaten 2 top 20 opponents this week in Rome. She did fall yesterday in the 4th round to Qin Wenjuan, but she's the Olympic champion. Nothing too bad about that. Bianca's looking in good form ahead of the French Open.
And finishing with basketball this morning, where Lady Luck was not smiling on the Toronto Raptors last night.
Last night, last season, last few years.
Fair enough.
But, the Raptors, Marcy, moved 2 spots down in the NBA draft lottery, meaning they will pick 9th overall. Historically, Toronto's done pretty well in that slot, getting DeMar DeRozan, Tracy McGrady, Jakob Poeltl at number 9. But there's still disappointment since the Raptors tanked this past season in hopes of landing surefire superstar Cooper Flagg with the 1st overall pick. They only had a 7.5% chance, mind you, so it's not a big surprise they didn't get him. But this is a surprise. The Dallas Mavericks, with only a 1.8% likelihood, did. Online conspiracies are running rampant as a result. The suggestion is Dallas traded megastar Luka Doncic to the big market Lakers early in the season in return for the 1st overall pick. Juicy stuff, but highly unlikely. Ernst & Young presided over all of this. So I think it's unlikely.
Nice theme touch there. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Seeing the smoking man in shadows.
Yeah, I've seen Gillian Anderson, but that's just me.
Take care, Scott. Thank you.
You bet.
Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it's already 23 degrees. Another day of withering heat. We are under a heat warning. It's going to be windy, sunny today, a high of 35. Well, fire crew is still on the scene of yesterday's massive grass fire in Transcona. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is there right now. And Megan, what does it look like?
Well, it is just a wall of destruction next to me on Gun Road. Gun Road itself is open, but I'm next to an auto supply and parts yard, and it's just hundreds upon hundreds of burned out vehicles. There is one fire truck that's there watching for hot spots in this area, but you have melted vehicles that are here. The grass is black, and there's very little that's left of this area. This fire on Gun Road started around 2 o'clock. They did manage to get it under control by about 5 o'clock. But what's interesting is you just look on the other side of the street, and the grass is green and nothing is touched by the flames, and yet you turn back and you look and it's just nothing but soot. The wind is quite strong out here this morning, so again, fire crews are watching for any kind of a restart of the fire in this area. But at the moment, again, as I say, you have Gun Road that is open. From what we understand, there were no injuries. 2 firefighters were checked over during fighting the fire yesterday. But again, with these windy and dry conditions, I know there's concerns about grass fires in the city. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. Now, that fire on Gun Road made for some anxious moments for people who work in the area. Carol Berry is one of them.
I was in my office and I have big windows along that side, and I heard a little bit of a bang, and then I heard a couple pops like that, and then I kind of looked over my shoulder and I saw gray smoke, and then I looked a little further over and it was black smoke.
And as Megan mentioned, it wasn't just Gun Street, but there was also a grass fire on McPhillip Street, which flared up behind Adela Streichhartz's house.
I actually started waking the neighbors up because I was really worried that it was going to reach one of our homes. Just concern, and just like, why did this happen? And the whole sky was on fire. It looked like the sunrise.
Streichhardt says that grass fire was put out in a couple of hours, and the city reminds people a burn ban is in place until May 19th. Outside the city, people in the Bird River area are also on edge. A grass fire north of the river there started yesterday. People between Hill Road and the Bird River Bridge were ordered out. Bob Cazzera was driving to his cottage when he saw the fire and decided to turn around.
The smoke you could smell, you could hear the crackling of the flames, and you can literally watch the fire going across. And probably it was within a quarter of a kilometer from the road, and the road takes a bend. And that fire was heading down that way, and I figured it's going to cross the road, and if I keep going, I'll get stranded.
Officials at the municipality of Alexander could not say how many people were forced out. The province recommends evacuations for anyone who owns cottages in the Bird River subdivision or nearby Tenko mine. Meanwhile, the province says crews are fighting a separate fire in Nopaming Provincial Park. Officials say as of yesterday, that fire was about 400 hectares in size. Now, Canada's first heat warning of 2025 has hit southern Manitoba and Saskatchewan with unusual intensity and length. Environment Canada climatologist David Phillips says Winnipeg is having 4 days of hotter than 30 degrees. Winnipeg normally has about 1 day above 30 in May.
This is quite exceptional. I mean, temperatures in Winnipeg should be a high of about 19, not 35 degrees. I mean, come on, that's like almost 20 degrees warmer than it should be for this time of the year.
And while we cool down by the weekend, Phillips says the coming months are calling for above normal temperatures, which could spell trouble for firefighters. Prime Minister Mark Carney unveils his new cabinet this morning. Sources tell CBC it's expected to be larger than his first cabinet, but it could also include a smaller core of senior ministers and a secondary group of ministers of state. It remains to be seen whether any cabinet ministers will be from Manitoba. University of Manitoba political scientist Chris Adams says Carney will have to ensure a good mix of cabinet members from a variety of backgrounds.
It's a bit of a Rubik's Cube. You have to kind of figure out what all these pieces are and how they can come together into a good workable pattern for the Prime Minister.
Meanwhile, MPs started arriving in Ottawa for Orientation Week. Winnipeg West MP Doug Ailfson landed in the nation's capital yesterday. He doesn't think he's being named to cabinet, but says it's important to have all regions represented.
So that, you don't have parts of the country that are left out. The cabinet decisions are not made sort of without the input of those regions. So I think it's very important for Manitoba, but for all regions.
Carney and his cabinet will be sworn in at 9:30 Central Time this morning in Ottawa. You can hear more about cabinet predictions and other national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. And you can find more Manitoba news and the latest on grass fires on our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
With a look at our regional forecast, here's Abby Adiyemi.
A heat warning still in place for Winnipeg and surrounding areas. We're going to see temperatures warming up to mid-30s, and we have that special air quality statement in effect for parts of the Interlake region, the powerful influence surrounding areas. Smoking in the air, it will be affecting you today. Looking at Winnipeg, it is sunny, warming up to 35. Currently, we are at 23 degrees. It's going to feel hot today. And in the southern part of the province, Brandon, Dauphin, Gimli, we're looking at temperatures between 17 and 23 at this time. And up north, Thompson having that light rain, and Churchill is at -1 with freezing. I'll call it freezing rain.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
So what a difference north and south here. Let's find out about the commuting situation with Corey Funk.
Yeah, Highway 1 westbound, just west of Carberry, has been closed since about 11 p.m. last night due to a police incident. We don't know any more details about that, but if you're heading down Highway 1 west past Carberry, you won't be able to get past there. Also, Highway 315 in both directions, from Bird River Bridge to 314 is closed due to a fire. As well, I was looking on Manitoba 501, there's a warning if you're heading eastward towards Ontario and crossing the border. Right across the Ontario border, there is a fire in the Ingolf Long Pine Lake area, and that smoke is causing visibility issues on the highway. So just heads up if you're heading east today towards Ontario, that fire that is just pretty much right on the Manitoba-Ontario border right now is causing some visibility issues. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
All right. Thanks very much, Corey.
Thank you.
23 minutes to 8 o'clock. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio. Well, next on the show to something different, but not something we haven't heard before, unfortunately. Late last month, Marika Gallia made what she calls a, quote, vulnerable post on the 54,000 member People of Brandon Facebook page. Here's what she wrote. She wrote, "It's been hard making friends in a similar life stage since moving to Brandon. My boyfriend and I are hoping to meet other late 20 or 30 somethings. I've been to the gym, library events, BU events, language class, etc." And she asks, where are people making adult friends? I spoke with her about why she felt the need to make the post. Good morning.
Good morning.
So as I mentioned, this was as in your words, a vulnerable post. What's your experience been like trying to make, first of all, how did you work up the courage to make a post like this?
Well, I moved to Brandon in 2021, and I have really an incredible job, incredible colleagues, but it just felt like because there was this age gap between me and them, we're in a different life stage, and you always tend to talk about work at the end of the day because there's always more to do and we care so much about our students that it was hard to sort of tap out of that and find friends that were, in this similar kind of stage. And I moved to Brandon during COVID, I guess, sort of the tail end, if there was a tail end. And I wasn't used to that. I'm from Toronto, had been living in Montreal and spent much of my early 20s in New York and Boston. So there's a lot of people and a lot of different groups based on your different interests. And so just the transition to a smaller community and a smaller community in a pandemic was difficult.
You talked, I mentioned as well in your post, you talk about some of the things you actively have been trying to do to connect. Tell us a little bit more about that, because I didn't read the whole post. You actually go on here to talk about music, which you teach, obviously, but cooking, meditation, even, you alluded to language classes. So you've tried a lot of things, deliberately to try to connect, right?
Definitely. I, worked with an amazing trainer in Brandon at Circle B Fitness, and she has a really great fitness community around her. And at some point, it's just kind of traversing that barrier of, oh, I see these people all the time at these classes. But, if you go to yoga class, you're probably not trying to be super chatty and meet friends, or, if you're working out 4 days a week, like a lot of people are trying to get in, finish their workout and get back to their families. So kind of jumping that barrier is a little hard. I think in music, we do it automatically all the time. And so I've sort of used to that, your work community is your friend community. My partner is Mexican, so I started to do Spanish classes with the city, and that was really great. But again, there's that age divide. A lot of the folks who are coming out to these recreational programs either have little kids or they are older and sort of have more recreational time. So, I just wasn't finding people who had a lot of space in their life. Yeah. And so I just thought, hey, I talk to my students about this all the time. If you need help with something, just ask. Like, you got to just ask.
What response have you had to your post? I mean, at last check, and this has grown, I think, since I last checked, but you had 200 likes, 137 comments. What kinds of things have people been saying?
Definitely. And that's not even the direct messages. There were a lot of direct messages that weren't posts. And there are some people who have said, hey, me and my boyfriend would love to meet up with you and your boyfriend. Maybe we could go to, a citywide garage sale and get lunch. Or in the Latin American community, there have been people who have said, they haven't had as many connections and friends, and they'd love to, hang out with us. So I've actually, for this entire time, been in Quebec and Ontario working. So I have like friend dates lined up for when I get back to Manitoba, and my partner's into it. So good for him too.
What I think is really interesting about this, though, is, Marika, you're not the first person I've interviewed who struggled to make connections in Manitoba. There was an international student who posted a very similar thing, actually, on a Facebook page in the last number of years, and really struggled with this. And you actually had responses in your post people saying that. We've struggled as well was one of the quotes. People are suggesting, joining clubs when you look at the reactions here, or churches. There are a few offers in the thread, at least, that we saw to meet up. What sense do you make of, you talked about the size of the community being different from where you lived before, but are you able to make any other sense of sort of why it's so different from when you were in Montreal and Toronto?
I think maybe in Manitoba, there's just a different social tone. I find that folks couple up earlier, maybe start their own families earlier. As a generalization, obviously that's not everyone, but I have seen a lot of younger families than I had seen previously. Maybe just, folks are kind of set in their high school friends. And, I think people who are into academia, who are into music, will gravitate to larger centers, right? I think there's kind of a bias there in that the folks who are in Brandon are maybe there for different reasons. It's a big agricultural community. There's a military base nearby. And those are not the reasons why we find ourselves in Manitoba. So not to put up artificial walls or anything, but there is a selection bias. Most people, we've made a lot of friends in Winnipeg, friends of friends, and that's been easier, but we didn't know anyone who lives in Brandon. And, that just makes it hard. I'm not Manitoban, so I don't really know, but yeah, we're not into hockey.
And not everyone is, but we can get lumped into these themes because a lot of people are into hockey, but there's so many other things, right? What do you hope people take from the conversation today, especially given that, as I alluded to, it's not just you in the post, but there's real value in you sharing this, I think.
Definitely. I think Manitobans are really friendly. as the saying goes. And I want to be careful not to knock anyone who's shown me incredible friendliness and kindness since I've arrived in Manitoba. I really do appreciate, my job and all of that. But I think you're not alone. If you're having this experience, you're not crazy. You're not alone. There are other people out there who are looking for ways to connect. And I've even toyed with the idea of starting a group chat from all the people who said, hey, me too. Just saying, a few of us are going here and doing this. A few of us are going here and doing this, and creating a sort of meetup group of young-ish adults in Brandon and seeing who connects from there organically. So just be brave.
Well, thank you for connecting with us today.
Thank you.
That's Marika Gallia. She lives in Brandon. She's also, by the way, an assistant professor of music at BU, so we thought we'd take the opportunity. She's a jazz bassist and composer and was one of CBC Music's 35 Best Canadian Jazz Artists under 35 in 2017. Here's one of her compositions.
So I called your name. You looked at me, but didn't recognize my face. You knew that it was me, but your eyes betrayed a lack of warmth, unbecoming of your face. Ooh, and when I think of you, the fog won't part. And I knew that I was there, but the memory's so far. A smile shines through the softness of your hair, and the way you talk about all the things when you care. Yeah. Ooh,
So we're listening to the bass playing of Marika Gallia, who lives in Brandon, who was just on with us for an interview. This tune is called Dream, by the way, if you're trying to find it. It's 13 minutes to 8 o'clock now on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. We'll update the fire situation and what's going on across this province at the top of the clock. Megan Ketcherson was out at Gun Road looking at what happened in Transcona yesterday as well. And Gun Road, by the way, is open this morning, so that was a change during the show. So if you have anything to report them about the commute, 788-3093, reach Corey. It's going to be hot again. We broke records yesterday, and today we're heading for a high in Winnipeg of 35 degrees. Winds will be south 40 to 60. And right now already it's 23 and it's not even 8 o'clock. Well, a warning that our next story does contain details about a horrific attack. Today, community members will gather for a walk to raise awareness about murdered and missing Indigenous men and boys. My next guest is going to be thinking about her brother. Corinne Chief lost her brother to a violent attack in November of 2021. Felix Bernard Chief was in the area around Burroughs Avenue and Aikens on his bike when he was confronted by a group of people. They were strangers. They were intoxicated. Chief was assaulted. He was stabbed. He was kicked in the head. He was found unresponsive by emergency personnel in the wee hours of the morning. He was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Felix Bernard Chief died. He was just 28 years old. Corinne Chief says that after the court case was done, she had a vision that guided her to raise awareness for men, boys, and families like hers. She says that Indigenous men have sacred and important roles in their communities, and that the realities that Indigenous men and boys face often go unacknowledged. The walk today is one way to raise awareness and to foster, she says, love, justice, and healing within the community. And Corinne Chief is in studio with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to start with the loss of your youngest brother, as you just shared with me off air. He was your youngest. What was Felix like? I just want to remember him for a moment.
Yes, Felix was a loving, caring, gentle person. You know, he'd give his shirt off his back if you didn't know him, his last dollar. Like he was just, that's the kind of person he was just a giving guy. And, you know, his life was taken way too early.
I understand he never let things hold him back. He was in an accident when he was a boy. He actually lost, I think, an arm, but then he got a scholarship for basketball or something later in life, right?
Yeah, that is. He was a student at Major Pratt in Russell, Manitoba. Graduated from there, got a scholarship for Brandon, and unfortunately couldn't pursue those because of some issues of housing and no funding to support that dream of his.
Yeah. I shared some of the details of the loss of your brother, a very violent loss of your brother, how he died. How did you cope going through the sentencing, hearing, the sentencing hearing for the people involved? How did you cope with that as a family member?
You know what? It was just the support from my family, the community members, Candace House, Kanakanagic, Medicine Bear, Manitoba Moon Voices, Southern Chiefs Organization, and MKO. You know, all those supports, I was so surrounded. They were very accessible, and that helped me. And also going to ceremony, ceremony put me in that spot of moving on in a healthy way, because of the anger. Like, there was 5 people convicted in this, and to hear this every other week was hard for me. And to go back and to those community members and to my family and to, share the stories of my brother, to keep moving forward.
The supports that you said were around you, were they there right away for you? Did you have to seek them out? What's your sense of how much support there is for family members of who are going through something like this, specifically to highlight, the what needs more awareness, missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys?
Well, unfortunately, it was like when I got the call from the homicide unit, they put me in contact with the Winnipeg Police, and then I met a Indigenous liaison. Her name was Angie Tuesday, and Victim Services Darcy, who worked alongside me right from day one, right till the end. And it still continues because there is still the perpetrators in the institution. So, it's ongoing. With the courts still.
What was missing in the support? What more could be done for families?
I believe that, our women and our girls, our two-spirit, our gender diverse, they get all of that support. And we need to be equal. We need to share that, those resources, those supports ongoing, because grief is a journey, it just comes in its waves, but we need the same support for the men and the boys.
Does it drop? Do you feel that it drops off, or just it's not highlighted in the same level? Not that it would take anything away from the support for women and girls, but it may be not highlighted in the same way?
It's not. I see that it's not. Like for my brother, he was in the papers in November 2021, but after that, it just kind of
fell away,
and there was no continuous support. You didn't hear about it again. Like, I haven't heard about it just because I'm in the courts, but you don't hear about it, so it's not acknowledged as much as it should be, and in the media and the social eyes and the public's eyes, that it just needs to be more supports, more services moving forward.
Why do you think that might be, that men somehow don't get highlighted, in the same way?
You know what? Those are my questions too as a family member. And for me, like, seeking, now that I'm out of the core part of the court system, I'm searching, I'm looking for these supports. And, I have to really look to where these are offered for the family. So that's a little bit frustrating.
What was your vision like when the one that I mentioned, when you said it guided you to raise awareness in this way for men, boys, and families? What was your vision like?
Well, you know what? I always said I needed to be a voice, but, my brother's no longer here. And my vision was to offer these supports to other families going through this, because they need to, because I've seen all the gaps in between the systems, attending court, going to trial. That is pretty hard, like emotionally, mentally, spiritually draining. And I just wanted to be an advocate for families going through the same situation, and how do we heal in a good way, and how do we get through this? Because it's very tragic when we lose somebody or we have somebody out there missing still.
How do you describe, Corinne, the important role that Indigenous men play in their communities? Like, what's lost to a community when we lose men and boys?
So
when you think about their role.
The role is, very sacred, in our history. Our men played a huge role in, providing, protecting.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to give that back. We need to bring them up to where our women, our girls are, with all that support. We need to have our men and boys right in front also. And to support them. Like I said, there's limited or non-existent, especially when it comes to our men and boys.
Your brother obviously was the victim here, but you did start by saying that even him, when he was living, was trying to find supports all the way along. Is that kind of what you're referring to when you look overall at men and boys, just to widen it out?
Yes, that's true. He did reach out to some supports, but those ones weren't helping. Like he'd go to treatment or, but those weren't the ones that, that were necessarily needed at the time. It was just, finding his identity, where he belonged, where can he go, where's that safe space for our men and boys just to, share what they're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
And just going back to my vision, once again, like his court ended last year in May 2024. And in that following year, in August, I held a 2-day healing gathering for our men and boys. And families that were members of the missing and murdered men and boys had come out to Wew'wasi and got that healing. And it's going to be continuous, because I want this to be annual. I want this to be acknowledged. I want this to be recognized, because, their lives mattered and they still matter. And for the ones, that are still missing, there should be, shouldn't just stop. It needs to keep going, and for the searches.
What will you be thinking about today when you're walking?
My brother. Like, I was just thinking about him on the drive in today, and this is for him. I'm his voice, and I'm just going to do what I can to help other families get through this.
Just last, what's your advice for other families who are maybe in a different place on their journey than you are? What would you say to other families about going through a tragedy like this, about where to find support?
Just don't give up. There's people out there, I can be reached. My information is online. I can be reached, to help you and support you in those ways, or to guide you of where the supports and services are that I received during these past 4 years.
Thank you very much for speaking out, Corinne. I know this is your first radio interview in this way, and really important to remember your brother. So I'm honored that you're here with us at CBC. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Corinne Chief. She's one of the organizers, in fact, and she'll be walking today in the Walk for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Men and Boys. So this starts at noon. It's going to be hot outside, but grab a hat, get some water if you want to join. Starts at noon at the Human Rights Museum, and it will make its way to the Legislative Building. Let's go to Heather Wells for our headlines.
Good morning. Well, just a burned out shell, hundreds of vehicles damaged at an auto storage and parts facility on Gun Road after that massive wildfire yesterday. That Transcona fire forced people out of nearby businesses, and it wasn't the only area. A grass fire has people in the Bird River area on edge as well. The municipality of Alexander advising anyone between Hill Road and Bird River Bridge to leave their homes. The province recommends evacuations as well for those in the Bird River Cottage subdivisions and nearby Tanko Mine. Meanwhile, another fire is burning in Nopaming Provincial Park. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thank you, Heather. Gun Road's now open, as we've said, in Transcona. We're going to talk to Russ Wyatt about what happened there. He's the councillor for the area, and moving forward, what his concerns are. Plus some reminders about in the city what the rules are for burning, the burn bans and such. In addition, we're going to talk to a Winnipegger, former Winnipegger, who now lives in Dallas. He says he's conflicted for who to cheer for, about who to cheer for tonight at the playoffs as the playoffs in the NHL continue. So stay with us. 23 degrees as we head for World Report.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger in for Tom Power. The explosively popular punk band Pup just released their 5th record. Frontman Stefan Babcock reflects on time passing, relationships ending, and why doing over 200 shows a year isn't sustainable anymore.
Cube, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
Mixed martial arts made a comeback in Montreal in a huge way this weekend with the first UFC event in that city in a decade. What has led to the sport's massive popularity with young men and how politics has entered the ring, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The coming weeks will be crucial for the Canadian government. It is hosting the G7 summit in June. A federal budget needs to be tabled soon, and there are ongoing tariff negotiations with U.S. President Donald Trump. Today, we find out who will be taking on some of those big responsibilities when Prime Minister Mark Carney's new cabinet is sworn in at Rideau Hall. Senior parliamentary reporter Janice McGregor is there. And Janice, you were at Rideau Hall almost 9 weeks ago, but now Mark Carney has an election win behind him. How will this cabinet be different?
Well, what a difference a mandate makes, Marcia. This morning, we're going to see the team Mark Carney wants around him to govern for the longer term. And some of his early choices are revealing. Consider the natural resources file. Jonathan Wilkinson, who is someone who didn't always see eye to eye with the energy sector, he's out of this cabinet. Tim Hodgson, a former advisor to Carney at the Bank of Canada, former CEO at Goldman Sachs, he is going to take over the energy file. And Carney has new options now to represent Western Canada. Former Vancouver Mayor Gregor Robertson is expected to be named the new housing minister. Eleanor Olszewski, newly elected in Edmonton, also expected to join this cabinet, as is Rebecca Alty, the former mayor of Yellowknife, who's now the MP for Northwest Territories. And Quebec is going to be represented by new faces as well. Newly elected gun control advocate Nathalie Provost, as well as veteran MP Joël Lightbound. Finally, St. John MP Wayne Long, one of the original MPs in caucus to challenge Justin Trudeau's leadership, he's also getting some kind of a new role today.
Carney's also keeping some experienced ministers in his inner circle. Who do we know is returning?
Indeed. Let's start with Sean Fraser, coming in to take over the justice portfolio and stick-handle demands from the premiers and Conservatives for things like meaningful bail reform. Chrystia Freeland and Stephen Guilbeault, contrary to some speculation, they are still going to be part of this team. We are only weeks away from the return of Parliament, but a federal budget, a G7 summit, key NATO talks. Among the senior roles, finance, foreign affairs, defense, Carney may be opting here to keep at least some continuity, some institutional memory close at hand.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor reporting in Ottawa. Honda says it is postponing its large-scale investments in Canada for approximately 2 years. Just last year, the auto manufacturer announced plans to build a $15 billion electric vehicle supply chain in Ontario, part of an agreement it reached with the Ontario and federal governments. But in the company's report for the past fiscal year, Honda says the growth of the EV market has slowed more than initially expected. It also says Honda's profits are expected to fall in this fiscal year due to U.S. tariffs on vehicles from Canada and Mexico. U.S. President Donald Trump arrives at the royal court in Saudi Arabia. He is once again greeted by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The two met earlier in the day on the tarmac after Air Force One landed. This is day one of a 4-day visit to the Middle East, and it is expected to be a lucrative trip. Trump has brought along some high-profile business leaders, including Elon Musk. In the backdrop of this trip are renewed efforts by the United States to end the war in Gaza. CBC correspondent Chris Brown is following Trump's visit in Riyadh.
Donald Trump's visit here feels like an enormous trade fair. I'm at the Saudi-U.S. Investment Forum in Riyadh. It's the centerpiece of this deal-signing bonanza that Trump has been touting. The Saudis are trying to transition their country from one largely focused on producing oil to an economy that's much more diverse. And all around me, they have these large-scale models of some of these so-called giga projects, such as a huge cube that's now being built in the middle of Riyadh that they say will not only be the tallest building in the world when it's done, but also the largest overall. Trump stepped off Air Force One and was met by the de facto ruler here, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, whose vision is driving this transition. MBS, as he's called, hosted a big lunch full of the world's top business leaders, and later the two men will attend a variety of business events on this day. But while Trump seems very comfortable in this part of the world, there are key issues that he and his Saudi hosts disagree on, namely the war in Gaza. Saudi officials want Trump to put more pressure on Israel to end its attacks on Gaza and to let humanitarian aid and food into the besieged territory. Negotiators for Israel, along with mediators, are meeting next door today in Qatar, and Trump's team is hoping that there will be some momentum after Hamas's release yesterday of an American-Israeli hostage, so that ceasefire talks might possibly lead somewhere. Chris Brown, CBC News in Riyadh.
Former Philippines President Rodrigo Duterte has been elected mayor in his home city, but he is currently in a European prison. His win is a huge boost for his daughter, current Vice President Sara Duterte. She's considered a strong contender for the 2028 presidential race. But Sara Duterte is facing impeachment on a slew of charges she denies. Her father is being held by the International Criminal Court in The Hague for crimes against humanity. It is not clear how he will be able to serve as mayor while behind bars. Canadian tobacco companies will start to pay out billions of dollars this year as part of a class action lawsuit. In total, $32 billion will be paid out over 20 years. Most of that to provinces and territories. Newfoundland and Labrador has put its entire portion into this year's budget. It's an election year. As Peter Cowan reports, experts are questioning that approach.
That's probably one of the lowest in the country.
Newfoundland and Labrador's finance minister has touted just how small the province's $372 million deficit is this year. But what Siobhan Cody didn't mention was the deficit would have been almost double if it wasn't for the settling of a decades-long court battle with tobacco companies.
There's a large tobacco settlement, which is about $500 million.
The Deputy Minister of Finance, Michelle Dewar, says it took the total amount of the settlement and put it into this year's budget, even though the actual amount will be paid out over 20 years. It's the only province to do it this way. Other provinces like Quebec and PEI are adding the amount they expect to actually receive this year, or they told CBC they're still studying how to account for this.
The government's up for re-election.
Ian Lee, who's a professor of business management at Ottawa's Carleton University, says politics may have influenced how Newfoundland and Labrador treated this.
The temptation is, hey, we'll take it all into revenues and we'll make the situation look much better than it really is.
The province says it's following accounting standards, but it'll be up to the Auditor General to decide if this follows the rules. Lee isn't convinced these payments are a sure thing.
Whether or not they'll be around to pay this money is very, very uncertain.
What's more certain, a provincial election is scheduled for October. Peter Cowan, CBC News, St. John's.
French movie star Gérard Depardieu has been found guilty of sexual assault in 2 separate cases. A panel of judges in a Paris court handed the 76-year-old an 18-month suspended prison sentence. Depardieu was convicted of groping a set decorator on a film set in 2021 and, in a second case, groping an assistant on the same set. Depardieu's lawyers say he will appeal the conviction. And lawyers for Eric and Lyle Menendez will be back in a Los Angeles court. The brothers were sentenced to life without parole for the murder of their parents. That was nearly 3 decades ago. Today, their attorneys are asking for a reduced sentence. Steve Futterman is following the case.
Eric and Lyle Menendez were found guilty in 1996 of first-degree murder in the killing of their parents. But now their attorneys are asking a judge to re-sentence them, which could lead to their release. The brothers have served more than 35 years in prison. Defense attorney Mark Garrigo says they are no longer a threat.
The key issue is there a likelihood of a super strike?
Under California law, a super strike is a serious violent crime. LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman says the brothers haven't publicly acknowledged the brutality of the murders. He opposes any resentencing.
The issue with the Menendez brothers is not never,
they should never qualify for resentencing. We said it was not yet.
Supporters of the brothers also claim they were sexually abused by their father, Jose. Ana Maria Baralt is a Menendez cousin. She wants them set free.
I know Lyle and Eric. I know them personally. I know their growth. I've seen their journeys. And they are absolutely well suited for this process for resentencing.
Even if their life sentence is reduced to 50 years to life, a parole board would still have to approve their release. During the hearing, the brothers will be connected from their prison by a video link. It's possible they will testify. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. We have another hot one on the way, and that means challenges for the fire situation and the air quality. Thanks for joining us on the Tuesday morning show live from downtown sunny Winnipeg. This is Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and on YouTube. Well, what an afternoon. A fire in Transcona within city limits yesterday. We're going to talk to the area councillor, Russ Wyatt, for the latest on the Gun Road fire. As you heard from Megan Ketchison, or may have heard in the news this morning, Gun Road has reopened, but her description of cars melted was quite something. So we're going to talk to Russ Wyatt about what we understand about the cause, what we know this morning, and what happened. Also a reminder of the fire bans that are ongoing and restrictions in the city as well. Plus, we've got a big playoff game tonight between the Jets and the Stars. We're going to talk to a former Winnipegger who lives in Dallas. He says deciding who to root for while watching the playoffs is easier said than done. So we'll find out why. Right now, though, to Heather Wells with other headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a grass fire has people in the Bird River area on edge. The municipality of Alexander has advised anyone between Hill Road and Bird River Bridge to leave. The province recommends evacuations for those in the Bird River Cottage subdivisions in the nearby Tanco mine. The province also says crews are fighting another fire in Nopaming Provincial Park. Officials say as of yesterday, that fire was about 400 hectares in size. And there also, as we've been talking about, have been wildfires within the city yesterday. The remnants of a fire on Gun Road with hundreds of vehicle damage to add an auto storage and parts facility. That Transcona fire forced people out of nearby businesses as well. There was a grass fire in the McPhillips Street area. Those stories and more coming up at 8:30.
Heather, you mentioned Nopaming. I want to read a comment that came in. I asked how people were affected by fires. So Tracy Mack wrote into us this morning, and she said, my partner has a cabin in Nopaming Provincial Park. There's this large fire there, as you've been alluding to. The highway's closed. Cottages owners are being encouraged to have a plan. Tanco Mine has been evacuated, people from there. She writes, I'm grateful for the hardworking firefighters that are battling this blaze. I'm concerned for the wildlife that will be displaced, and I'm hoping some rain in the forecast will be accurate. So a lot of people just sort of on edge this morning all over the province, right?
Yeah, and it just seems like, I mean, these conditions aren't letting up just yet. We do have cooler days coming, but we still have a couple days to endure of hot weather and windy conditions.
We sure do. Here's Abby to walk us through those details.
And those smoke and fire up north really triggering that air quality statement we have for the Interlake region into the northern part of the province. Looking at the heat warning, we have it for Winnipeg and surrounding areas this morning. Already seeing sunny and warmer temperatures around 23, 24 in the southern areas. It's going to stay sunny all day. The winds will peak up from the south. Temperatures will climb to around 35 degrees, making it feel hotter than you started this morning. But tonight we should see some clear conditions, and then it stays quite warm. Light winds will come from the northeast, and the rest of the southern regions from Brandon, Dauphin, Gimli, we're seeing temperatures already between 17 and 24 degrees, and they will be climbing to the mid-30s today. But up north we're seeing light rain in Thompson already and -1 in Churchill.
So hot down here in the south. All right, let's get to what's happening in the commute with Corey Funk.
So far, the only major issue to report at this point is in the Highway 1 just west of Carberry. There is a closure that's been in effect since 11 p.m. last night due to a police incident. It's westbound westbound Highway 1. That's all we know about at this point. Also, keep an eye out for smoke from that fire around the Ingolf area. If you're on Highway 1 east, heading towards the Ontario border there, there's smoke making visibility poor on the highways there. If you see anything else going on, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, we've been talking about the fire in Transcona near Gun Road. Carol Berry works nearby. Listen to this. She was at her desk yesterday. She says she heard what sounded like an explosion.
I was in my office and I have big windows along that side, and I heard a little bit of a bang, and then I heard a couple pops like that, and then I kind of looked over my shoulder and I saw gray smoke, and then I looked a little further over and it was black smoke. So then I kind of called our safety officer and I just said, "Are you seeing this?" And he said, "Yep, we're all on it." So they walked through the plant and they told us all to go home. So I came straight down Redonda, and then I turned, that's the way I come home, is I would turn down Gun. And I thought I would be able to get past it because I thought it was before the tracks on Day. And so as I came down, of course, we were all stopped on that at that point. Oh, I was quite nervous for sure. And then kind of going to the gray cloud was a little ominous, but I just went around the other side.
So that was Carol Berry speaking with Radio-Canada's Catherine Moreau yesterday. Now, Russ Wyatt is with us up early, the city councillor for Transcona, to talk about this. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Marcy.
So this was a large grass fire. We know it swept through an industrial area in North Transcona. Firefighters have been investigating what caused the fire along Gun Road. What do you understand about what might have happened and caused this?
We still don't know the cause. They're investigating it, but the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service did an amazing job. We had no less than 3 grass-related fires going on, that the Gun Road being the largest one. That started at 2 p.m. It took them 3 hours to get the fire under control. The fire spread quickly with the southern winds. Businesses were evacuated. 2 firefighters suffered minor injuries that were checked out by our paramedics and then released. The fire department deployed their drones that they have now to basically identify the hot spots to start to knock them out as quickly as possible. The fire spread into a car wrecker on the south side of Gun, which is what you would have heard from that lady who was speaking earlier on the radio. And east of the fire was on the south side of Gun Road, east of Day Street, moving north. There's some major businesses there. There's Border Chemical on the north side and the Armour Springfield, highly flammable, so it was crucial that the fire be knocked down ASAP. And it was, though 2 businesses for sure suffered damages. I was on the phone this morning with Henry Westavelt, who indicated to me that the whole his business was saved, but he was evacuated as well. So it was quite a day. And then 4:30 p.m., another fire erupted on the south side in my ward as well, Bellaband Place in Transcona Ward. That was threatening homes, grass fire on the south side of Bellaband Place. Firefighters were able to get that fire under control within an hour. And then a fire erupted at 5:30, Rue Trappist as well, which they were able to knock down fairly quickly down off of Pembina Highway.
In St. Norbert. It's interesting. Megan Ketchison was out on Gun Road this morning in your ward and was like looking at, one side of the road with green grass, the other side just completely, the fire ripped through. She described cars looking like they were melted rather. What do you understand about, are all the hot spots out? Like what from your view this morning, what is it like out on Gun Road?
Crews were, I was on the phone yesterday for most of the day with Fire Chief Christian Schmidt, and I can tell you that they worked into the night. Fire crews ensured that the fires were all put out, including that one on Gun Road.
Okay.
What she would have heard propane tanks exploding in the auto wreckers yard. And so, you had transformers exploding. They were being burnt. It was, and the fire department would just like to stress the importance of everybody to respect the fire ban that's in place now. That includes outdoor bonfires. That includes briquette barbecues even. Just be very mindful of not throwing your cigarette out the window when you're driving. Butt it out and put it in an ashtray in the car. Those sorts of things.
When I look on a map here at Gun Road where that fire happened, I mean, this is near the rail line. What could this have to do with the rail lines?
In the past, we've had issues. I know it was about 15 years ago, we had a massive fire in the Arm of Springfield that affected a plastics plant that was caused by sparks from a train. They're not sure yet what the cause of the Gun Road fire is, or the Bellaband Place fire as well. So there is a fire. There is a very active rail line behind Bellaband Place, operated by CN Rail. They're not sure of the cause. I know that earlier this year in February, we had some real bylaw enforcement issues with regards to the auto wrecker who was parking cars illegally, wrecked cars on the shoulder of Gun Street. I tried to get a hold of the owner, went to the site. The site was the auto wrecker itself was a bit of a disaster in terms of our fire crews would have had a hard time getting into that site, let's just say that, because it wasn't laid out properly in terms of auto wrecking. And
so just to interject here, they had trouble yesterday getting into the site, or you're referring to something in the past?
I'm thinking they would have had difficulty getting into the site because of the way I had difficulty walking into the site, never mind driving into the site in February of this year. So, they would have had a challenge with that auto wrecker to get in there to fight that fire, but they nevertheless did. I can tell you multiple apparatuses of the fire paramedic service were deployed, including pumper trucks, including tanker trucks. They tapped into hydrants, but they also brought in tanker trucks to knock down the fire.
So there could be some concern around access to the site. I'm wondering, when you think about, you've been on council represented Transcona for many years. How does this compare to other fires? And do you remember a day like this? Because even in the newsroom, I was thinking, like, within the city of Winnipeg, I couldn't recall a day like this. So what's your sense of what happened?
Well, I don't recall a day where, there was a fire on Vimy Road, a house fire that they started at 11:30 in the morning, and then you had this fire up to 2 p.m. on Gun Road. Then you had another fire on Bellaband, started at 4:30, a grass fire behind Bellaband Place, south side of Bellaband Place, and then you had another fire at 5:30 down off of Pembina Highway, another grass fire. It just, I think, it strikes me. I've never seen anything quite like this, where you have them all at once. We have this unseasonably hot weather, dry weather, and I think what we're seeing is the impact of that.
What do you need from going forward from, when you look from the city and the province to make sure or prevent this from maybe happening again, especially we've got this period of hot, dry weather. We're not done with this yet.
Well, bigger picture stuff, in terms of public policy, we have a lot of issues, I still say, in a lot of our older industrial parks, like in St. Boniface. You recall the auto fire where basically, we were very lucky in that
the huge explosions there in St. Boniface.
Yep. And you've got major manufacturers in there who, frankly, if there was any other province or jurisdiction, they'd be subject to environmental regulations like they're not here. They're close to rail lines. We have a lot of I guess you would almost call them ticking time bombs, not only in the city of Winnipeg, but around the city. In the Arm of Springfield, we have serious concerns because they have an industrial park. They do not have fire hydrants. They do not have a full-time paid fire services volunteer. We've had real serious issues in the Arm of Springfield, north of Transcona.
So some wider concerns.
Bigger concerns about how we regulate and what we allow, and really ensuring that we practice as much prevention as possible.
Just last, what have you been hearing from constituents, and what will you need to hear today? What will you be seeking to find out about what happened?
Well, I'll be following up with Fire Chief Christian Schmidt to see how their investigation is going, to see what the cause of the fire was, and if we can determine the cause, we can hopefully prevent these things in the future from happening, these types of fires in the future. We just the chief asked me to really stress the importance. We're right now have the fire ban in place in the city. Just no bonfires. Be very conscious of what you're doing outside in terms of your, cigarette smoking. Briquette barbecuing is not allowed. Just asking the citizens of Winnipeg just to honor that, respect that.
Yep.
Firefighters' lives, they did an amazing job, but they're on the line every time they respond to a fire like this.
Important to reiterate those rules.
Yeah, nobody got injured. That was the important thing. In all these fires, nobody got hurt. including the house fire down on Vimy Road. People were evacuated. They self-evacuated there. We were very fortunate yesterday with all these fires going on that nobody got hurt.
All right, Russ Wyatt, thank you.
Thank you.
Russ Wyatt, City Councillor for Transcona. If you want to read more about the Gun Road fire, it's open now, Gun Road, by the way, but you can read how this all developed at cbc.ca/Manitoba. A heat warning again today for the city of Winnipeg with a high on the way of 35 degrees. In Thompson, we have had light rain a little bit this morning, so that's a bit of good news up in the northern part of the province. But there still is a special air quality statement for up around the Paw and up around Victoria Beach today. Right now in Winnipeg, it's mainly sunny. It's 23 degrees. In Tuduli Lake, it's snowing. It's -2, so what a difference. Lynn Lake, there is light rain continuing. Also through Island Lake, that light rain is continuing. In Thompson, that light rain continues as well. I was alluding to it. 9 degrees in Thompson currently, in case you're curious. Time right now is 8:25 a.m. We do have a challenge with traffic in the city. It's bumper to bumper on Pembina Highway northbound around the Victoria Hospital. You're losing a lane there due to construction, so it's really slow. We've got a call about that. Update if you need 788-3093. Well, next on the show, we got the big playoff game tonight, and for most of his life, my next guest has been a dedicated fan of the Winnipeg Jets. Nat Yeager always used to cheer for the Jets until he moved to Dallas a few years ago. That's when he decided to adopt the Stars as his new home team. He didn't fully abandon the Jets, though, when he took on the Stars. With the two teams battling it out in round 2 of the playoffs, it's created a bit of a dilemma, as you can imagine. And Nat joins us now from Dallas via Zoom. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm okay, but you're not wearing white.
I know. It's one of those days.
So what was your reaction when you found out the Stars were going to be facing the Jets in round 2?
I mean, more than anything, I think just excitement. Both these teams had quite a year chasing each other through the league. And, as a hockey fan and someone who grew up in Winnipeg, we've been going to a ton of the Stars games since we got here. That was one of my caveats for moving down to the U.S. Was to find a city with an NHL team. So I'm just really stoked to be seeing both these teams having some real success in the playoffs.
How did you decide who to root for when you're watching these games? And also, what do you do? Have you picked a side?
I think it's tough to. A friend made a joke, and this is a little bit of a riff on it, but when the Jets play, I'm a Jets fan. When the Stars play, I'm a Stars fan. And when the Jets and Stars play each other, I'm a Leafs fan.
Ouch!
But
don't do that.
Yeah, but it's a fun excuse to watch hockey. I mean, honestly, like the Jets getting this far in the playoffs and having the season that they did, obviously, I'm going to cheer for the hometown guys to get to the end. I'd love to see a cup go back to Canada, especially to Winnipeg.
Right.
But thankfully, I think we'll be happy either way, depending on how this series comes out.
Do you have? I mentioned you're not wearing white this morning for the Jets, but do you have both jerseys?
I do. Yeah, my Jets jersey is still hanging in my closet. It's covered in wine stains from the last time I was at the whiteout party. Me and my friends used to go all the time. About a year after we got down here, I bought myself one of the vintage Stars jerseys because those ones from the 90s, I think, just look so cool.
What reaction do you get from people back home here in Winnipeg when you tell them you're not cheering for any particular team?
I think there's a little bit of fun elbows in the ribs, but I mean, for the most part, it's just a good way to like stay in touch with my friends and family. I mean, we talk trash to each other every now and then, but it's nice having some friends texting and real live updates as the game's going on. And it's great. It's a good excuse to stay in touch with people at the very least.
To the seriousness of the hockey game tonight, right? It's a big game on the line. When you watch this series, who do you think might have the edge? Just, putting your hat on as an armchair analyst.
Yeah. It's a tough one because I think the nice part about the series is both games have not really shown a true advantage in either side. Like, I think, obviously we always talk about Hellebuck, and he has some struggles on the road in the playoffs. And I think maybe that was evident in the last game, but at the same time, like, the Stars played surprisingly well yesterday or on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the Jets, they have a really strong core team. Those guys have been playing together for a really long time. And so I think that's what we saw during the season. And, you'd hope that core team can carry them through. So I think it's actually a really, really evenly matched series. It seems like each game is anybody's game.
The crowds don't seem to be matched. I think Winnipeg's got that one. How do you describe watching hockey since you've been at whiteout parties here at home?
You know what?
So
it's
like
really
in Dallas,
funny.
yeah.
Yeah, I think hockey in the U.S. in general, especially in the South, if we want to call it that, does not get the same kind of effect that like football or baseball does. So it's almost funny being a hockey fan down here because people are not anywhere near as diehard. I will say for the rest of my life, Winnipeg has the best fans in the NHL. That's the loudest arena I've ever been in, and it was such a joy to be a part of those games. But nothing quite comes close, but the Stars are trying.
Are you going to the game tonight, or are you going to be watching it with friends from home?
I'll be watching it with friends here, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, if there's a game 6, I'll be at game 6.
Wow. So much fun to talk to you. We'll have to check back in with you as we go along here and see what happens. Come on, Nat, give me a Go Jets go.
Yeah, we'll have a good Go Jets go.
Take care in Dallas. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
That is Nat Yeager, former Winnipegger down in Dallas, both a fan of the Jets and the Stars. Bumper to bumper traffic, as I mentioned before the interview on Pembina. It's time for your CBC News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It is 23 degrees and breezy already. We continue to be hit by that uncharacteristic May heat. A high today of 35, windy throughout. Well, a wildfire in an industrial part of Transcona damaged buildings and left just burned out shells of hundreds of cars at an auto storage and safety facility. The fire also forced out people working in the area. Fire crews were called to Gun Road and Day Street around 2 yesterday afternoon. Carol Berry works at a nearby business.
I was in my office and I have big windows along that side, and I heard a little bit of a bang, and then I heard a couple pops like that, and then I kind of looked over my shoulder and I saw gray smoke, and then I looked a little further over and it was black smoke.
It wasn't just Transcona, but frightening moments for a Winnipeg woman who woke up to a grass fire behind her McPhillip Street home. Adela Streichart says it looked like the sky was on fire. She hopes people will pay attention to burn bans.
I didn't realize how seriously people should take fire bans. Now, you think it's just a precaution. It's not a precaution. It can just like that in a moment change hundreds of people's lives.
The city of Winnipeg reminds people a burn ban is in place until May 19th. A grass fire has people in the Bird River area on edge. The municipality of Alexander advised anyone between Hill Road and Bird River Bridge to leave their homes yesterday. The province recommends evacuations for those in the Bird River Cottage subdivisions and nearby Tanco Mine. Larry Lee lives 2 kilometers east of the Tanco Mine.
We saw a few people evacuating, perhaps 5 or 6 that we met on the road, and we saw probably 10 or 15 Tanco Mine employees driving north to get away from the area that Tanco Mine was in, which was within about 1 or 2 kilometers of the fire.
Lee planned to stay put last night, but had bags packed just in case. Well, we broke a heat record in Winnipeg yesterday as we reached a high of 35 degrees. We're headed back up there again today. Environment Canada climatologist David Phillips says Winnipeg is going to, in fact, have 4 days hotter than 30 this week. Normally, Winnipeg has about a day above 30 in May.
This is quite exceptional. I mean, temperatures in Winnipeg should be a high of about 19, not 35 degrees. I mean, come on, that's like almost 20 degrees warmer than it should be for this time of the year.
And while we do cool down by the weekend, Dave Phillips says the coming months are calling for above normal temperatures, which could spell trouble for firefighters. In other news, Prime Minister Mark Carney unveils his new cabinet in just about an hour. Sources tell CBC it is expected to be larger than Carney's first cabinet, but it could include a smaller core of senior ministers and a secondary group of ministers of state. It remains to be seen whether any cabinet ministers will be from Manitoba. University of Manitoba political scientist Chris Adams says Carney may need to consider many factors.
The ingredients that go into forming a cabinet is, since Justin Trudeau, you go for gender parity. You also go for a balance of regions. You don't want to shut out regions if possible. Thirdly, you want cabinet ministers who are capable of leading a portfolio.
Adams says Carney must also plan a cabinet who can work well together. And that cabinet will be unveiled in less than an hour. People in Thompson get their voice back. A packed city council meeting last night as councillors debated whether to restore a bylaw allowing public comment at the start of council meetings. Ron Matichuk says he's watched more than 75% of Thompson's council meetings.
It appears most people in Thompson don't care, but some do, because some came to talk to me about it, and they're upset about it.
The vote ended up passing 4-2, and the public comment period is now restored. Councillors have the option to revisit that issue. To the Stanley Cup playoffs.
The Edmonton Oilers are one win away from the Western Conference Final. A 3-0 shutout for Stuart Skinner and the Oilers in Game 4.
That's the Oilers in Edmonton beating Las Vegas in Game 4 of their best-of-7 semifinal. The Oilers now with a 3-1 lead. And as you heard there, they can finish off the Golden Knights tomorrow in Vegas. On the schedule tonight, the Winnipeg Jets in Dallas, needing a win over the Stars as Dallas leads that series 2-1. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you to Heather Wells, Shamikan Ketchison, to Joni Nicolo in our news center this morning. Our live team, Corey Funk, Abby Adiemi, and Brad Lillies, as well as the associate producers who work on today's program, Chidi Akuma, Jenna Bedosso, and Sid Sundance Horshig, as well as our Nelly Gonzalez, who is the show's producer of current affairs in our unit, and Leif Larson, the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba. We'll end with weather, but Corey has an update on what's coming up on noon and a final look at traffic.
Just got off the phone with Doug Edmond of the Whiteshell Codgers Association, and they can see that fire in Ingolf from the northern tip there of West Hawk Lake. So he's waiting for more information from the province about what that means for cottagers. Will that mean evacuation? Will it not? They're watching that fire closely. We booked them for noon at 12:05. He'll have more information by then. As for right now outside, you do want to keep an eye out on the St. Vital Bridge. Westbound is down to one lane, just the right lane, as well. Really backed up on northbound Pembina right now. Highway 1, just west of Carberry, westbound, still closed due to a police incident.
Abby.
Most of the southern regions all seeing sunshine right now. We're warming up to highs mid-30s, and the heat warning is still in effect for Winnipeg and surrounding areas. Up north, we're seeing Churchill still at -1, and it's going to be highs around 0 for that part of the province.
Okay, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for your hard work this morning. And remember, stay safe out there, stay hydrated, take it easy, be mindful of the fire bans, and we'll have the coverage of the new cabinet coming up through the day here. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC's Information Radio.